Hello, YouTube. This is Dark Tower Palaver. This is our podcast covering Stephen King's Dark Tower series, and this is a book club, number 14 for The Wastelands.
Yeah.
So, kind of excited. This has been a lot of fun, this book. I mean, I feel like we always have fun, but I think that as we go and get a little bit deeper into the books, like, that's still good content, but it just feels like, I think there's maybe a little bit of a hopelessness of, like, how long we've been in a book.
Yeah.
But when we're in a fresh book, it's always, like, more exciting and stuff. I don't know why, but...
yeah. This book's flying by too.
Oh, it is. It is. I mean, I do think that we did change kind of our philosophy of how to go about it to hopefully try to cover more content quicker. But yes, I do feel like we've gone through this one a lot quicker than the other couple
previous
books.
ones. Yeah.
Yeah, and those ones were shorter books too. So, and then I guess we won't really talk about it too much as we enter the actual show, the podcast side, because we're a spoiler-free episode for the most part until we get to the very end. But the March Madness, we are in our finals now.
Yeah.
So go on over to the website at darktowerpalaver.com and go and cast your vote, because there is only basically 6 days of voting on this one. It'll be from the 25th, which is yesterday evening or late afternoon. I think I got it posted, and then it'll end on Thursday the 31st at midnight. When that day ends, it'll then be final. So there's actually a little bit less time to vote on this one. So get over there and vote. Actually, it's not even that big of spoilers necessarily, even, with who we have here. I guess kind of it is, because
we don't want to give away like that they're the most beloved for everyone. We did this last time. So
that's true. It's so once we get into the podcast, we'll keep it away until the very end. We may mention it a little bit in the spoiler section.
Yeah,
because again, we don't know if this little rodent that just showed up in this story is significant at all, let alone the fact that he'd be a finalist in this bracket. So
we're going there.
Well, we're not in the episode yet.
It's true.
The spoiler section, or the spoiler free zone, is in my opinion is right when it starts. This is kind of like the bonus.
Well, we are if they're only watching the show on YouTube.
Maybe, I suppose, but yes. So get over there and get your votes cast. I'm excited to see how this turns out. Already been some upsets, aplenty, and definitely wasn't expecting some of the things to go the way they did. But excited to see how this, if there's any more surprises left in the old hopper, or if it's going to end up the way that we assume it would from the beginning. So, hello, Mike. Welcome. But let's go ahead and dive on in and hit the intro, and then get into the podcast proper, and then get rolling with our number 14 book club for The Wastelands. Let's go ahead and take a listen.
The Dark Tower by Stephen King. The man in black fled across the desert, and the gunslinger followed. Go then. There are other worlds than these. Death, but not for you, gunslinger. It's time we had our own palaver, I think, and it's going to take a while.
And yet, dauntless, the slug horn to my lips I set, and blew. Child Roland to the Dark Tower came.
We are content, one from many. Let the palaver begin.
Hello and welcome to Dark Tower Palaver. This is our podcast covering Stephen King's magnum opus, The Dark Tower series. My name is Tad.
And I'm Peter.
I had a slight thought there to actually say your name just to see how much I could throw you off, because we do start to autopilot into the intros a little bit, and every once in a while I think about bamboozling you in some way.
I think I've done that once.
You did. And I was actually thinking about doing it that time, and then you did it to me. So yes, the thought did enter my mind there. But we're here for the Wastelands Part 14 book club, and I was just looking at the percentage of where we're at. We have now crested the hill here. We are now at 51%. So we are now closer to we are now past the halfway point, and I don't know if we could necessarily say we're on the downhill slope, but it certainly would seem that way. It doesn't feel like it. Feels like
Did we ever check that Kindle? Does it have the preview for book 4 at the end of it?
I didn't check. No.
I was gonna say, because are we even further than we think we are? Because if we take out the preview, it's like
we might be. And honestly, that just feels like Midworld, right?
Yeah.
That things may be off on time.
Yeah.
So, so the first thing we're going to do is let you know with this episode, 95% of this episode is going to be, maybe even more than that, is spoiler free. Only at the very end of the episode, we will go into the spoiler section. We'll warn you about that up front so you'll know. So if you have not finished the 7 primary books, this is a safe episode to listen to for the most part. When we get to the end, though, we'll make sure you have ample warning. If you're watching on YouTube, the screen will go bright red instead of black, which it normally is.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really hard to mistakenly fall into the spoiler section the way that we have it designed now. So feel free to feel safe listening here if you haven't finished the series. If you're maybe midway through book 6 right now, this would be a safe place to listen because we're not just going to randomly drop spoilers from book 7 on you in this episode. Like our roundtables, though, we certainly would do such things.
It happens every roundtable.
Constantly, yes. Next up, if you want to find us, you can find us on Apple Podcasting. You can stream us on Spotify or Stitcher. You can find us on pretty much any podcasting service that's out there. If you want to subscribe, rate, and review us on any of those services, we'd appreciate that. You can find the show notes at darktowerpalaver.com. Just before we started the actual podcast here on the YouTube channel, we were talking about the March Madness, which is coming to an end before the next episode airs. So if you're listening to this, you may have very little time to go and cast your votes. We're not going to say too much because spoilers and stuff, but we are in our finals. There's only 2 characters left, so go have your votes heard before the 31st. On April 1st, the polls will be 100% closed, and then keep an eye on our YouTube channel. We will have results there for that. I'm really excited to see how that turns out. So you can find that over. You can find links to that over there at darktowerpalaver.com as well as there's pretty much every link to everything Dark Tower Palaver you can possibly imagine is over there at darktowerpalaver.com. You can also find our Patreon at patreon.com/darktowerpalaver. If you want to support the show, you can do that over there. We actually just recorded a kind of a deep dive into Hearts in Atlantis yesterday for our Patreon folks. That was a request. So if you'd like to hear that or whether you'd want to request us to do something, it doesn't have to be Dark Tower related. It can be anything. You can request things over there. We'll do those monthly hangouts. And, if nobody requests anything, we figure out things to do in there. But if you have something you specifically would like us to talk about, the best way to do that is support us on Patreon, even at the lowest level. And that'll allow you to get into our Discord server, which is always fun. It's a way to torment Peter all the time. You don't have to wait for just every fortnight. You can torment him all the time, which is the best thing in the world. Believe me, 20 years of experience tells me that is true.
Hashtag Ted is terrible. Right there, off the bat, earns it during the intro.
So you can do that over at Patreon. And then if you want to contact us, there's a number of ways to do that. Peter can let you know what those are.
Best way is through email. It's darktowerpalaver@gmail.com. Tad mentioned our YouTube channel. It's youtube.com/darktowerpalaver. That's where we have been posting the result videos for the March Madness. So if you haven't seen those, you can get my initial reaction, because Tad knows the results. He compiles them all together and shows them to me. And not even shows them to me. You just announce them. I don't even get to see it. I'm not even that cool.
You don't bring your screen up, so that's your fault.
That is true. It is my fault. But it's great. Like and subscribe. Ring the bell to get notifications for when we are going live and when we post something new, because YouTube is expanding. We are going to be using our YouTube more for more videos. We've already done one trailer reaction. We obviously will be having more this year as more things drop.
Salem's Lot will be
Salem's
coming
Lot.
down
It's got to be coming soon, right? Like in the next month or so, right?
I don't know about soon. It's only March. It comes out in September.
I don't know.
I'd say it's certainly going to drop during the summer blockbuster months.
At least.
Certainly.
Guaranteed, but it might even be sooner. We don't know.
I'd say May is probably, just gut check, I would say May is probably when I would suspect a trailer.
Which is just a little over a month away.
I would say, and that's maybe a teaser as well. That may not even be a full trailer.
That's true.
But yeah, that's probably coming, and we'll have a reaction to that.
And we'll absolutely do a reaction video for that. We have other things planned for YouTube as well, so keep an eye on that. Our social media is facebook.com/darktowerpalaver. Our Twitter is @darktowerpod. That's @darktowerpod. And then our Instagram is darktowerpalaver, all one word, no spaces. And then if you want to get some merchandise, we have the 2 options available. The Dark Tower Palaver one that Tad's wearing, and then the Truth, the hashtag Tad is terrible that I got. Available on TeePublic. It's teepublic.com/users/darktowerpalaver is the easiest and fastest way to find it. And then you can use either one of the versions of the logo to get any number of things. Stickers, pillows. Tad's got a pillow. It's right over there. Look, right here.
Indeed. Yep, and it's a great little pillow, too.
You like that pillow?
I like that, yeah. See, I have a recliner, so I like when I'm, kicking back in the recliner to have a pillow to put behind my head as I'm watching stuff or whatever. So, very handy, whether I'm watching something or reading something, all kinds of fun stuff. So, let's go ahead and jump in, though. So, like I said in the intro, we are basically a little bit over halfway through. We're at 51% of this, according to the Kindle version. So, we are chugging along. It doesn't really feel like it to me. Like, for some reason, like, if you were to ask me, like, where do you think you guys are at, just approximately, I probably would guess 35, 40%-ish tops.
Yeah.
So, the fact that we're a little bit over 50% is a little bit surprising to me. I feel like we've just been kind of blowing through this pretty quickly. So, that's a lot of fun. So where we're at with the way this book is done, there's two quote-unquote books within the books. The first one was Jake. The second one is titled Lud, which the subtitle to it is A Heap of Broken Images. And we are currently in Chapter 4 of Book 2, which is titled Tower and Quartet. So that is kind of where we're at right now.
Did you say Tower and Quartet, or is it Town?
Oh, I'm sorry, Town. Yes, I should probably. I have it this weird like gray subtitle. I put it in like this gray, and it's kind of hard to see. I should probably actually just make it pure black. It'd be a hell of a lot easier to be a hell of a see. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, and also the font's kind of weird. But yes, so Town and Quartet, that is our Chapter 4 subtitle, and we are currently in subchapter. We left off in subchapter 7, so we're jumping into subchapter 8. So let's go ahead, and first off, I'll recap where the last little bit leading into it, because King is very good at these subchapters of leaving you something at the very last of the last subchapter that then carries over to the third or to the next one. This one, for instance, is literally like if you go into the subchapter 8, it's almost confusing until you go back and look at subchapter 7 and realize like it left off to lead right into it. It's almost like a subchapter break shouldn't be there, but King does those kind of things.
That's King for you.
Yes, indeed. And hello, Mark. Good to see you. We got Mark and Mike in the chat. That's fun.
There we go.
So where we left off, the Ted is talking to Aunt Talitha. We're in River Crossing. And the last thing of the last subchapter is Roland asking her about the city, the lands between, and asking if there are Harriers, and then who are the Greys and Pubes. And Aunt Talitha sighs deeply at this ask. So not necessarily a happy topic that Roland is asking. Seems like he's good at that.
Oh, he's very good at that.
So, jumping into subchapter 8 then, right off the bat, Aunt Talitha tells Roland that he is asking a lot and that they know only a little, which is always fun.
Yeah.
You know, when you're asking all kinds of big, important questions and the person you're asking knows very little in terms of answers. Seems like that's something that happens a lot in movies and books and television. It's just, I don't know. It's just, maybe it's because it's anti-dramatic to have someone that actually knows all the answers and just spills them all for you. But, yeah.
Well, isn't that the whole point? Is you got to have some mystery.
Oh, I mean, certainly, yeah. But still, me as a content consumer, I want all the answers right away.
So what you're saying is you're greedy.
Like, I mean, I'll say whether it was the first time reading this, I was pretty pissed getting around this point when I'm like, dude, I'm already like, midway through the third book of this 7-book series, and I still don't know what the fuck the Dark Tower is, even what the purpose of this is. I don't and so I was kind of getting a little bit angry, and every time like there'd be a slight hint at anything Dark Tower, my ears perked way up, and I was just leaning in towards the book a little bit because I want to know more. And up to this point, we really don't know a whole lot. Roland seems like he may know a little bit more than he's letting on, but we're kind of like Eddie and Jake and Susanna. We don't really know a whole lot, and that irritated me as a reader. I wanted all the answers right away.
You want it now.
That's why, I mean, we've talked about it in the other things. There's one of the books in this series that I was not a big fan of the first time through, and now it's my favorite.
I'm going to stop you there. I'm going to bring that up in the spoiler section.
Okay. No, and I wasn't going to go too deep into it. I was just going to say that like my desire for answers completely twisted my perception through reading this series.
Yeah.
So.
And that's absolutely why I want to talk about it, but it is something for the spoiler section because it is not one of the books that we're covering.
That covered
or in covering right now. So
Yeah.
let's say,
So,
put a pin in that.
And then Zach just joined us. Hello, Zach. And then going on here, she says that the city is an evil place, and specifically an evil place for Jake or any kids. She asks if the tech can move around. Roland says maybe, and then mentions picking up the beam on the other side of the city. And she says that she figures that that's what they were doing.
So that's like talking about like trying to detour and go around
And then
the city itself, and then picking up the beam on the other side.
Yeah, and then she's like, she basically is like, yeah, I figured that's what you were doing, which is interesting because, like, again, it's one of those things I want to know answers to. Is it's like, how much does your average person know about the Dark Tower? So like the whole beam, like we've already been kind of given the idea of what the beams are,
Yeah.
like what the general geography is, where it's like no matter what, if you find a beam and then follow it in instead of out, you're going to end up at the Dark Tower, halfway
Yeah.
in the middle of everything. So
And we got to the end of one beam in this book. So seeing the other end of it, and we're like, okay, so we're starting all the way as far over as we can.
yeah,
And now we got to go to the middle.
Yeah.
Not to the other side of the beam, because that's another beam on the other side of the tower.
it's like a slice of pizza,
Yeah.
or it's like a pizza that's all sliced up and it has that little table thing in the middle.
Yeah, we need that.
We need to get to that little
the little plastic
the
piece.
little table.
Yep.
Oh man, yeah, and then so with that, I guess I was curious about like, okay, and then I guess this kind of hints us a little bit is that Aunt Talitha earlier asked Roland about his quest, and he told her that he's on the quest for the Dark Tower.
Yeah.
And then she here kind of says that she assumed that they were on the path of the beam. So I just wonder, like, is she piecing that together? Is it common knowledge that the tower is at the center of everything, and these beams, all cross at that
Sure.
point? Like, it's just one of those things we don't know. Like, Roland might know that as being the person he is and the position he held before the world moved on. So it's always interesting to see who else knows some of this stuff.
Well, it honestly doesn't surprise me that she asked about the beam, because it's kind of like, like if you met me and I'm just like, oh yeah, I'm on my way to Vegas from Salt Lake, you're going to be like, oh yeah, so you're going along I-15. It's like the most
Yeah.
common path, kind of thing. But
But I feel like we are more knowledgeable about our world than some of the people we've experienced so far in this story. People aren't necessarily. This world is very.
But you got to realize this is the second people we've seen in this world.
Yeah.
I mean, literally, we've seen Tull and this.
But even Roland is talked in a way of like not really knowing. In book 1 with Jake, is he's like.
Well, he made it
there's-
perfectly clear in this book about the beam. It's
Yeah.
like, well, now we just got to follow the beam, and look, the Great Road was built along the beam.
Yeah.
That wasn't accidental. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
They built the Great Road along the beam. People had to have known about it.
Yeah. So they, like I said, King gave us hints with the intro of River Crossing that this is not really a happy place or safe place. By the way, everything was hidden and appeared to be abandoned, and now we're getting more explicitly that this region is not a good place. So, remember the tension when they first arrived and stuff. Susanna was all on edge and stuff.
Very like westernish, walking into town, like
It doesn't even feel
waiting,
Western.
waiting for. I was like waiting for the ambush,
You know,
like the guns to pop up on the top of the building and shoot down at you.
I'm not sure if it was out yet, but I know that one thing that really captured the vibe of River Crossing in that moment when they were all tense and stuff was Book of Eli.
Oh yeah,
Like, I don't know if it could have been a thing that I've already had already read this, but I know the first time I read this after watching Book of Eli, there's some points in Book of Eli that are just like super, super like sketchy and like
the one
tension building.
the one trap that he almost
well, there's the
woman.
family, the
Yeah.
old guy and the old lady. That I think
the
of.
old couple, yeah, but I'm thinking of the lady that's like, help me, and it's like, nope,
Yeah,
Like
yeah, it's
that,
just-
that kind of thing where it's like, I ain't falling for that, no way.
Yeah. But then Roland pointed out earlier on, too, in terms of like there's things that there are signs of life, but all those things are very cleverly hidden.
Yeah.
So it's just like I think all of that kind of pieces together that this isn't necessarily a safe and happy place. And I just think that here in this section, we're getting a little bit more of that revealed.
Yeah.
Especially sinister is the fact that she called out the danger to Jake.
Like
that she's
specifically singled out Jake alone in the quartet.
And to me, I'm just like, King, you better leave this kid alone.
Yeah, I know,
You-
right?
You've done enough.
He's already died twice.
Yeah, he's already died twice. Unloving family. Like
Yeah.
there's a laundry list of reasons why this kid should just be able to maybe have a relatively safe and happy journey for a little bit. I'm not saying the whole time, but like let's
He just went through getting drawn through the door.
through the Dutch Hill Mansion.
Yeah.
Exactly. So definitely, I don't know. I just felt it was ominous that it was called out with Jake specifically.
Right.
And then the next bit here is, despite all the evidence to the contrary, Eddie's mind is still on the idea that the city is a helpful or friendly place for their quest. He has visions of helpful elves or transportation or books because, like me, he is hoping for more information on the Dark Tower. I mean, I will give Eddie credit that I feel the same way.
Yeah.
Like, nothing would make me happier than just like, oh, look, a treasure trove of books, and they all talk about the Dark Tower. Like, I would be a very happy reader at that point.
Yeah.
And the fact the city looks so much like New York City makes him believe it will be what he hopes. So that's kind of like this little section here. This whole section right here kind of frustrates me a bit because while I had the same thoughts in terms of first seeing the city, as you move towards River Crossing and the vibes and the clues that we're giving is that there's nothing but bad with what's ahead. So things aren't looking good. Like at first, when you first look over that crest with Eddie and you see the city, there is some element of you that maybe thinks a lot like Eddie, but I just feel like everything since that moment, there's not good at the end of this path that they're heading on right now. So it makes me kind of want to just grab Eddie and shake him, where it's just like, dude, why are you being so fucking blind? Like
come on, dude.
Like he's just like being like just hopelessly like optimistic, and it just makes me just like, I don't know, maybe it's part of it is like having the experience as being a King reader, knowing how King works. Things generally don't work out all that happy in general. So maybe it's that, or maybe it's just the fact that I'm looking at clues, even whether it's the first time I read it, because I did see the same things where I'm just like, man, constantly King just keeps giving you these little tiny bites of information, and every single one of them are telling you the same basic thing, like, don't hope for a whole lot here. This is not going to be a happy place.
Right.
But Eddie doesn't seem to be catching on to that. He seems to be continually just like, oh, elves and what is it, Land Rovers and books and everything else that he wants to find.
It's one of the only instances where I actually agree with you on Eddie. It's like, it's not Roland telling him at this point that, hey, keep your expectations realistic or anything like that. It legit is someone who's lived here. Like, listen to him.
Yeah.
She's literally telling you that the child is in danger. Like, stop focusing on your wishes and your dreams and your hopeful situations and everything like that, and put your face in reality, dude. Like accept it.
Yeah.
And this is one of the only instances where I'm just like, I'm with you. I would like to grab Eddie and just be like, dude, wake the fuck up.
Yeah, come on, man, wake up. And I think you get that kind of thing in movies too. There's always those times where there's a horror movie or a war movie where someone's like going into an ambush, and as an audience, it's an ambush, and you just want to like scream at the character because they're just like continually whistling in their stupidity towards whatever death awaits them. It just feels like that kind of moment, which is always good. I think that like books of course are the same kind of thing. It's just giving you a narrative, but I always find it, as a movie fan, I always find it funny when we hit those moments that are so reminiscent of something you see in movies at times,
especially when it's so like blatantly obvious too. It's just like, come on. You hear a and the bushes rattle, and you're like, I wonder if I should go investigate that werewolf sounding sound. Da, 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 da.
As you look up at the full moon.
Yeah.
Indeed.
You hear it. Oh, and you're like, I better go investigate. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Hello, is there anybody out there?
Especially if you already know that there is a werewolf on the loose. Like, this is a fact.
You found like a mangled person or something.
You found like a mangled. What happened? Oh, he was killed by a werewolf. Oh, okay. You walk down, then you hear a bush rattle. You're going to be like, I wonder what's that noise. Come on, man.
Yeah, indeed.
And, of course, I use my all-time, fear werewolves,
Yeah. Yeah, indeed. So then next up here, as Eddie is ready to say something along these lines, Jake says that he doesn't believe they can go around, and then of course blushes when everyone looks at him. He then asks about trains, and there's an uneasy silence from all the inhabitants of River Crossing. Aunt Talitha heard of one and saw it when she was a kid, and of course her being well over 100, that's a long time ago, before the world moved on. She asks if it is Blaine that he means, and he says yes, and Roland is studying Jake because he is not, because that's the other thing we got to remember here is Jake has not let anyone know any of his backstory yet.
Yeah.
So all this stuff that's clear to him and clear to us as readers, Roland, Eddie, Susanna, none of those, they're not privy to any of this stuff yet. So Roland, though, is very good at
knowing things that he should know.
Yeah, exactly. So he's studying Jake, and obviously Jake had a start when she asked about Blaine because of the final essay, Jake is familiar with Blaine. Let's see, some of the thoughts I had on this section. I feel for Jake here. I feel like we've all been in that position, whether it's when we were kids or maybe you were in like an adult situation, but you were the lowest person on the totem pole and you had to speak up. I think we've all been in that position where you feel like you're an inch tall and you just feel way out of your depth. And
even as adults, we still have that sometimes where you're pulled into a meeting or someone catches you off guard and is like, "Hey, why did this happen at work?" Or, what's going on with this? We do it with our friends and family and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But it's so much worse when you're a kid.
Oh yeah, exactly. So I just feel like with this, I feel so much for Jake because I think we've all been there. I believe so.
Yeah.
And not only age, but it is also that he is new to this world, and then speaking up is probably not easy. So I got to give Jake some credit here. Yeah. Because that's probably easy to just maybe stay quiet and all that. You're new in the world. You're a kid. You're literally talking to people that are as old as dust. They're just they're ancient. They just feel like everything is stacked for Jake not to say anything. So I got to give the kid some props for actually speaking up and I don't know, kind of inserting himself into it. Not even just to like ask a question, but he's like saying, "No, we can't go around," type thing, or "I don't think we can go around."
He's answering for the group.
Yeah. So I got to give him a lot of credit there for that. This is something that we recognize along with him due to his final essay. So it does feel like somewhat of a payoff because now we're seeing some of these things that we, in the first book, quote unquote, of this book, we basically saw a bunch of things that were very nonsensical. And now to see at least one of them and a big part of that essay paying off in a way, it feels like suddenly things are clicking into place a little bit.
Yeah.
And I like that. It's kind of like the setup has been happening. Now we're starting to see a little bit of payoff, which makes me then think I think actually when I read this the first time, I think I actually may have like flipped back in the book and read his final essay again. Because it's like once Aunt Talitha says Blaine,
you're like, "Hey, wait
suddenly
a minute."
It's like, okay, there's a connection now.
Yeah.
So then I start to wonder, like, okay, I need to go back and reread that whole final essay again because what else?
Oh, that's coming back. There's something. This is actually going to be a thing.
And maybe I should have known because I mean, of course, Roland's mentioned, the Dark Tower's mentioned, but ultimately, to see Blaine, it just made me wonder, okay, what else is in this final essay that might give me some hints as a reader of what might be coming?
Exactly.
So I do like that little kind of setup and payoff finally happening. And also we and Jake are familiar with Blaine, but now Aunt Talitha adds the mono behind the name. That's a new bit of information. So far we've only heard about Blaine and Blaine being a pain and Blaine being the truth. But Blaine being a mono or a monorail is a new piece of information. So that's a lot of fun. Fun little addition here from Aunt Talitha. And then the last bit we have in this subchapter, Jake is looking back and forth from Aunt Talitha to Roland, telling them that he doesn't know how he knows, which again, I feel like that's something I'm not familiar with in reality, but it's one of those things you've seen in a million movies before where like someone has some kind of intuition. They're like, I know something, I know I shouldn't know it, and I don't know how I know it, but I can't say I've ever actually had that in reality, but it's one of those things that feels familiar from every movie and television thing I've seen that from. So it does still feel familiar, even if it's never happened to me.
Yeah.
Eddie internally says that, and that's the truth, which that's another little, jarring thing there. But then he says the opposite. He knows that Jake knows more than he is telling, but he knows that Jake is afraid. So kind of cool to see Eddie being a little bit more perceptive there. Roland then authoritatively but respectfully tells Aunt Talitha that it is their business to figure out, and she agrees with him. He then asks what she knows about the city, and she says little, but everything she does know, she will tell. So, again, interesting that Eddie is unknowingly quoting Jake's final essay, us as readers. I mean, Jake doesn't even know, right? That's in Eddie's internal monologue. So it's like, literally, we are the only ones that know, like, wait a minute, Eddie. Hey! Again, if I didn't flip back and read the final essay from the Blaine thing from Aunt Talitha, I guarantee you at this point now I flipped back and read the final essay the first time I read it. Because I do remember flipping back. I don't remember the exact moment that sparked it. But if the Blaine being mentioned by someone in this world didn't do it, I guarantee you Eddie saying, and that's the truth, would have been like, okay, I am stopping right now and I am going back and reading that final essay and I am going to microanalyze it.
Yep.
And I do feel Roland's brisk administrator's voice is part of being a gunslinger. This authoritative voice is one I doubt anyone really challenges in any circumstance. Also, this does remind me that as friendly as these folks are, they are outsiders. They're not part of our group. They are outsiders. Yeah, they're helping. They're giving some information, but they are not part of this group. So ultimately, Roland kind of keeping his own counsel as a group is something that kind of like makes you stop and think for a second, because it's like, this is some of the only friendly faces we've seen this whole story, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Ben. So
I mean, Toll wasn't necessarily unfriendly. I mean, Allie the barmaiden wasn't,
yeah.
But the second he lays down a gold piece on the bar, they're like, "Oh my God, Gold! I'm going to kill this guy." And he's like,
Yeah.
go back to your card game, and
Yeah.
everything. Like, but
in general,
that
this
didn't necessarily feel like
welcoming.
welcoming, but it also didn't feel like out of the norm for what was being described. I mean, hell, it almost felt like he was describing the Old West, which was,
Yeah.
I mean, if you walked into a bar in 1878 in Arizona and dropped $50 on
Yeah.
the bar, you'd probably get shot,
Yeah.
and they'd probably rob you. Like,
Yeah.
that's just what happened. That
Yeah.
doesn't mean that there's not good people there. I mean, obviously we know what happened with Toll
Yeah.
and everyone in it, but
Too
still
soon.
it didn't feel that like evil until honestly like the whole Sylvia Pittston came
Yeah.
out. When you
But
got to see the sermon and everything like that, that's when you're like, oh shit, this is like fucking evil.
This is bad juju.
I mean, even like when he met Brown, he was so wary of him, like,
Yeah.
oh,
He thought he was-
oh, you're the Man in Black, aren't you?
Yeah, yeah. But ultimately, this is the first time I really feel there was like, because I feel like maybe there's like a standoffish indifference in Toll, but this feels like 100% friendliness. And I don't think there's anything that has made me suspect that anything is afoot here. So, so I think it's easy to then just let your guard down and just kind of think that like, oh, we're all one big happy family thing
Let's
here.
just share everything.
Yeah, and exactly. So like until Roland did that, even myself, like I had lost track side of it and stuff.
You dropped your guard.
Yeah, where it's just like, yeah, I was just wanting, cool, let's get this conversation going. There's a lot of cool stuff going here. And then for Roland to kind of shut it down and like say, no, this is our business. It's like, oh yeah, I guess you're right, Roland. Like,
But then also for Aunt Talitha to respect that
To-
decision and like not push the issue.
yeah,
That honestly made it like my defenses dropped even more than at that point. For me, is that it's okay. She's not going to press because if someone wants information and stuff like that, they're going to press at that point.
yeah,
They're going to be like, no. We're giving you information. You got to give us some information. No, she's like, nope, that's cool. We'll
Yeah.
tell you everything we know, and then you can go on your way. And
Yeah.
that's not normal in this scenario. It's like,
Yeah.
hey, tit for tat.
yeah,
Quid pro quo, Clarice.
yeah. Information.
Yeah.
It's a very powerful thing.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So let's go ahead and jump on over to subchapter 9.
Yeah, and so subchapter 9, they're going to start telling them about the area and the city, and
Mike says she's over 100. She probably doesn't really care. That's probably
that's
true.
Yeah, that's
Like, there does come to be a certain level of like indifference towards things. I mean, we also saw that in The Stand with Mother Abigail. Like
Yeah.
she's literally like the center of this entire like society, and she really in a lot of ways feels like she doesn't give a fuck about any of it. You know what I mean? She's like, all this is like all your fucking meetings and stuff, they're pointless.
It's
And-
actually-
and part of that does, I mean, part of it's like the whole like supernatural God thing, but I do think there's also an element of it where old people, they just don't give a fuck. They hit a certain age and
Yeah.
they're just like,
It's-
all the things that you young people care about, like it doesn't really matter.
Yeah,
I'm
it
old enough
doesn't-
to know.
It doesn't matter. And it's actually funny that we say that because also, the very first thing I notated about subchapter 9 is that it's not Aunt Talitha who does the talking. The twins, Bill and Till, are the ones that tell the Quartet about the town and like the history and stuff like that. It's not Aunt Talitha. She just sits and kind of corrects them and is like, corrects a date or corrects this or that or offers an opinion or something like that.
Yeah.
But it's the twins that do the talking, not her.
Yeah.
And that's just like very old person-ish, like you're
Yeah.
the oldest one in the room. Go ahead and you tell them about
Like
that.
holding court.
Yeah, Tad, go ahead and you tell them about the time that we killed that buffalo. that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And that's even one of the things that they talk about is like buffalo hunters. They basically what they do is they start talking about their town, and Roland realizes they know very little even about their own town, let alone Lud, just river crossing. Twins tell him about the town of river crossing, similar to how Susanna had imagined it, just as a pit stop on the Great Road, where people are just passing through to get to Lud. Like I already mentioned, the buffalo hunters and everything like that. And then we also find out that the city is unknown to the people of river crossing because it was built generations before. And the quote that I wanted to say this is that they said, history had been lost in the furthest reaches of the past, even when Aunt Talitha's great-great-grandfather had been a boy. So the city, the Lud, is what we're talking about here. The history of that was lost even before when Aunt Talitha's great-great-grandfather was a kid.
Yeah.
And if Aunt Talitha's any indication for how old people live,
Yeah.
that's a long time ago that the history of the city has been lost. So
Yeah.
it's gone. So, do you have any thoughts on this one?
Yeah, so this section is obviously my favorite brand of stuff, which is world building. The loss of memory is totally logical, considering the things that we've seen, such as time and distance being really funny and off in this world.
Yeah.
So it just makes total sense that memory would also be a thing that's just completely,
Right.
I don't know, it just seems odd. I also it's all funny from the stuff we've heard from previous books. If things like that are slipping, then memory would just be just as odd. But I love this stuff because it's world building, and it's being done in a way that makes it super. Because I feel like for me, I've never been able to get into like high fantasy and stuff, and I think the problem is because it's usually not, at least in my experiences, very limited experiences. A lot of times it isn't like this kind of thing. Like it'll turn into a thing where like it's just the narrator. And it's just whole pages and pages and pages of just telling you all the. I mean, even Tolkien got into that stuff where it was just like there's times like, dude, I don't.
So is the son of so and so.
Yeah, I don't.
Who is the son of so and so and the son of so and so.
Yeah, and it's just like, and like Tolkien's not even like the heavy, crazy stuff. There's some of the high fantasy stuff that just gets so ridiculously long form. And I get that some people are into that, but like I love world building, maybe like a little bit more approachable. And I think King does it in a really good way here to make it to where it doesn't feel like he's just. Like it isn't as like boring as like some of that Old Testament Bible stuff where
Right.
it's just like, how many sheep the people of Israel had as they moved into this different region and they go through their whole like it gets some of that shit gets
So had so many in his flock, and so had so many in his flock.
or like Tolkien, I remember at one point goes in and like spends like 3 pages like right in the middle of like a pretty intense thing to stop and tell you the history of a sword, and it's just like, do we really need this?
Yeah.
Come on, man. And I know there's going to be some people with their daggers out ready to stab me over that because Tolkien's obviously a very beloved character in literature in terms
for
of
sure.
as a creator. But I do enjoy Lord of the Rings overall. There are just some times where I'm just like, come on, let's move it along. I do the Roland finger spinny thing. It's like, come on
let's
here.
go, let's
yeah,
go.
let's go on. Let's keep this moving. So I do love this. It's world building. I've been saying that pretty much since the beginning of these book clubs. I love the world building stuff, and this is adding to it. But now it's in a different way. We're not necessarily seeing world building in like Roland's backstory or where he came from, but we're seeing what did it look like in a different part of the world, and I definitely appreciate that.
Yeah.
And then also hello, Alan. Alan joined us here.
Oh, hi,
And then he
Alan.
says about 200 years. I mean, yeah, if you're, I don't know if you're talking great grandparent, like I feel like
Let's see.
if she's 100,
She's 100, and so but also we're not going to say that they're having kids later, are they? Well, they're still going to have them, in their
normal.
normal 30s, 20s, that kind of thing, even into their 40s. But great grandfather was a boy, though. That's the important thing to take away from it is that he's a boy.
Yeah.
So let's see. My grandfather, my dad was born in 1952. My grandfather was born in 1909. Yeah, so I would say, yeah, if you're looking at it in that retrospect, 200 years, it does sound about right.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you right now, 200 years for spoken history to be your only key.
Yeah.
There was a mystery podcast I was listening to about a ship that got lost up in the Canadian wilderness in 17-something,
Yeah.
full of treasure. And the only thing they have is it was the exploration one where it's trying to explore like the Arctic up there, and the only thing they have to go off of is like the local tribes of natives up there that have spoken history of white Europeans being lost at not at sea because their ships got frozen in the ice,
Yeah.
and that's all they have, and it's so convoluted that you can't figure out where the ships are.
Yeah.
They've never found them because
Yeah.
that's all they have is spoken history. So there's a real world example to kind of ground this that it makes sense. The city that's just over yonder is the history's lost to it because word of mouth history, not reliable.
Yeah.
It's not.
Yeah.
You get legends and myths and everything born out of that.
Yeah.
So do you have any thoughts or
That's it for
okay.
this section. Yeah.
So next up, Eddie goes on one of his wonders. Wonders if the machines left behind might still work, or The twins say if there's no one left that knows how to use them. The other twin then mentions the old ways are lost to the Grays and the Pubes. Both of those are in the city. The twins also talk about how the electric lights and references the story of Icarus, which Susanna perks up at. And I also did as well. I remember my first time reading. I'm like, holy shit, Icarus.
Yeah, me too.
That's another link to our world. And I always love seeing like the links and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah.
And then
it's something familiar.
Right?
You know, it's like if you're like, if you're living in another state and then you suddenly run into someone that was born in the same state you were born in. It's just like there's something familiar there. You can commiserate with the person a bit and stuff. And yeah, I don't know. It's like, a friendly face and a sea of strangers.
Yeah,
So,
exactly. And then the twins end that section by saying that no man ever flew, not even the great old ones. And I wanted to take note of that one because it's like, well, there's a huge difference. We just had the Icarus being a similarity between our world, and then no one ever flew. That's a glaring difference between our two worlds. We obviously have the power of flight. People have flown. Hell, we've been to the moon and everything like that. We've been to outer space. They're talking like, well, no one can fly. The way they say it in here in this section is like, well, no one can fly. That's just a story. Not even the great old ones could fly. And for us, that's like, well, that's not. And he's like, well, actually, the first time I met this chap over here next to me.
Well, remember Roland's reaction when he came through the first time and looked out the window.
That's true.
Yeah. So, I always love throwing people off with that, where it's just like, like around 100 years ago, nobody, when I tell people like when you're on an airplane and look out a window and just consider to yourself, and I always think of Roland, of course, but then I do think about it where it's like, call it 120 years. 120 years ago, no human being had ever seen what you're seeing as you're looking out that window.
Yep.
In the long history of thousands and thousands of years of human history, no human being had ever seen what you're seeing when you're watching out the window from an airplane. Like, that's something that in the tens of thousands of years of human history, only 120 years,
it's not possible.
Yeah, it hasn't been possible. So it's just I find that crazy, that kind of stuff. And you just mentioned like the moon, and it's like, we were just talking about great grandfathers a bit ago. I think my great grandpa was born in like 1910, I think.
Yeah.
Somewhere thereabouts. And so it's like, when he was born, like the Wright brothers had a flight, but like it was just a very small niche thing. And it's like, in the course of his lifetime, he died in like the early 2000s. It went from flying became a regular thing, a part of war, and we landed on the moon all in the course of his lifetime.
It's what's the one? It's there's a significant historical figure that was born in like 1899, and during the course of her life, we learned how to fly, landed on the moon, and fought 2 world wars. And it's just like dropped nuclear bombs and everything like that. It's just looking at what she lived through in that time frame was just unreal. Like you're saying that was your grandpa.
Yeah.
That
and he was
lived
even
through
born
that.
a little bit later, right?
A little bit later,
in the 1910s. So
that's crazy to think about.
Yeah, it is. It's crazy indeed. So go on.
Yeah, so right here, this is also we already talked about this once in your subchapter. Eddie gets very excited at the thought that there is machinery in the city and it's running on electricity because they talk about streetlights.
Yeah.
And how it's push a button and the light comes on and everything like that. And that he could potentially figure out how to get it running again, either by just finding the on switch or replacing a bunch of fuses. It's going to be that simple, he thinks.
Yeah.
Eddie's ever the optimist. I'll give that to him. He's still thinking like that.
Yeah. Yeah, indeed. And I love here with Eddie being sarcastic with them and saying, imagine that, when they talk about the flameless light.
Oh, yeah.
And Susan pinches him hard into the table. And I guess that's just her lot in life now, is to keep Eddie in line.
Yeah.
Once they decided the whole marriage thing, that was then going to be her destiny, to have to try to keep him on a leash.
Yep.
And that's a tough animal to keep on a leash there, is Eddie's tongue.
Is when you have a sarcastic husband. Yeah, absolutely. My wife has to deal with that.
And then, as you mentioned, Icarus, another one of those things like the Bible or the Beatles that is shared with our world. I find that it really fascinating, and honestly, when I was reading this the first time, it made me wonder if this was indeed just our post-apocalyptic world. Roland's world. Like, just maybe it's like the Mad Max bias, but there was part of me that just constantly wondered if, is this just our world in the distant future and shit's, in some ways because things are so advanced, but then there's like Citgo pumps, and there's just people are
Yep.
singing Hey Jude and talking about Man Jesus. Like there's just all this stuff. And now Icarus, like, you know, all that's from different things, right? Modern pop culture. The Bible's like thousands of years old. Icarus is an ancient
Well, even electricity.
story.
Like, we didn't have any hint of electricity before this.
Yeah.
You know, like, we had the machinery that Shardik ran on and everything like that, but we had no street lights in Tull.
Yeah.
There was no gas pump.
Yeah, it was
no electric plugs or anything like that.
Yeah.
So to hear this here, that actually adds another level to Roland's world, where I remember first time reading it, and we've talked about this before in spoiler and non-spoiler, is the fuck is this world? Is this a different world? Is this
Yeah.
our world post some apocalypse or
Yeah.
something?
Yeah, indeed. And I think Mad Max probably had me thinking more in that direction. Not that, you know, whatever. But yeah, I think that's probably where my bias lies.
And then, like you said before, reading it after Book of Eli, which is a post-apocalyptic, after a nuclear Armageddon kind of thing,
yeah,
very reminiscent of this.
Yeah.
Go watch the Book of Eli, guys. If you don't know what we're talking about, go watch the Book of Eli.
to see Gary
got-
Oldman going back as a villain too.
You got a
chef's
very
kiss.
well, that's true. Gary Oldman as a villain is the way it should be.
Yes.
But then again, he could play a houseplant and still be fantastic.
It's true, but nobody does a villain better than him though. Like, dude, Stansfield. There's just all the different
Oh,
things
he's
he's done
great.
throughout his career. Like, yeah, it's like there's a lot of great villains out there. There really are. I'm not going to take away from a lot of other people, but all of them, you know, all of them have a hard time holding a candle to Mr. Oldman. And then
But, yeah.
Mike says it's odd that what people will accept a Dark Tower man flying. No way. AI trains that are supersonic, of course. Like, yeah, it is like because there are elements, and that's true as we're talking about these different connections. Is there are elements of this world that are well beyond our thoughts or capabilities, right?
Well, a cyborg,
giant
a
cybernetic
cyborg bear.
Bear, yeah.
Like,
Although
well, let's be perfectly honest.
I
the
would-
robotics in Shardik's cave
are well beyond.
even as rustic and as worn down as they are, is more advanced than anything that humankind
and
in
it's
our world
thousands of
has
years
created.
old, and it's
Yeah.
thousands of years old. So it's just like, yeah, it's not there. It's a weird like dichotomy
yeah.
with this world. Is it's like kind of both. Like some elements, it's like they're hundreds of years in the past. Other elements are like thousands of years in the future. But I will say, if anyone wants to like let's crowdfund like an actual let's build a real Shardik, I'd throw some money into that.
Oh no.
Oh yeah, that'd be great.
Don't build a beast that can think.
A giant beast at that.
That has only one weakness, is very hard to hit. No.
Yeah, I'm all about it.
Dude, have you not seen Jurassic Park? Like, come on, man.
I'm all about it. I'm all about it.
So the twins go on and tell them that it's been 4 or 5 generations ago that the city was still populated and actually civilized. And I wanted to notate that part a little bit. Civilized. So it's not unpopulated. It was more populated and more civilized. So what is it now?
Yeah.
Especially on top of what Aunt Talitha warned us about.
Yeah.
Like, they'll just flat out kill Roland.
Yeah.
They might keep Eddie. They'll keep Susanna for breeding purposes.
Yeah.
And they definitely want Jake to fill his mind with stuff. And
Yeah.
It's like, and then they say this, that it's, oh, it was civilized. Like, oh, but that is a long time ago.
Yeah.
4 or 5 generations back.
Yeah.
Then we find out that there is horseless vehicles and manufactories. I put it in actually straight out of the book, manufactories. Autocorrect tried to correct it to factories like 4 times on me, and I was like,
yeah.
no, stop it.
Or manufacturing.
Nope, just factories. It always tried to correct it to factories.
Oh, okay.
So, twins tell them about the bridge over the River Send, how it was still standing 20 years ago, just 20 years ago. So
Yeah.
we do have eyewitness of that and everything like that. Roland asks what kind of a bridge it is, and they tell him that it's great. It's a thing of great steel cables. So instantly, my mind went to Golden Gate Bridge.
Yeah.
That's the first time reading it. That's my first thought.
Yeah.
I'm a 49ers fan, San Francisco Bay, that kind of thing. That's and also that
I'm a fan of The Rock, the 1996 classic by
and
Michael Bay.
Alcatraz is right there. Yep, absolutely. But I'm sorry, for me, if someone says, "Hey, famous bridge," I think Golden Gate Bridge. That's the first bridge that pops into my head.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, if you're from the East Coast, there's several bridges over there that you might think about.
Yeah.
Aunt Talitha says has probably fallen down by now, and she even goes on to call it devil's work that a bridge like that exists.
Yeah.
which is just kind of like shows you like the superstitious nature that people have gotten now that they've gotten away from using that technology kind of thing. And we're talking about a bridge,
Yeah.
not even like electricity. She doesn't say anything about electricity, but she says the bridge is devil's work.
Yeah.
I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Subchapter finishes with Ed Talitha instructing them to say why the city is so dangerous now. The twins, I mean.
Yeah. Yeah. So I love how the detail of the bridge is explained as a web of a giant spider.
Oh, yeah.
You know, that's just a great thing because, like, you know, in our world, we obviously know and we take those kind of bridges for granted. I don't think any of us have really actually looked at the Golden Gate Bridge or the George Washington Bridge or any of these bridges and actually really marveled at the engineering master works that they are. I think so many of us, we just like glance, oh yeah, cool bridge, San Francisco, okay, oh cool bridge, New York City, like, but I don't think any of us really actually put that much thought in. We just take for granted a lot of things in our world, and that's just one of them. And it kind of reminds me of like the Roman structures. I don't know, there's like I don't know if it's like an apocryphal story, but there's a story I've always heard of the Dark Ages, because the Romans obviously built some pretty monumental things,
arches and stuff like
arches
that.
and just
aqueducts.
Yeah, all these just different things.
Yeah.
And I think there was one of them that I heard about, which was not in Rome proper, but it was out in the empire somewhere, and it was some sort of like archway or something. And after the Dark Ages, the Roman Empire falls. And literally, it's like the world reverts hundreds and hundreds of years, like just because the Roman Empire disappearing, it just everything reverts. It's almost like, yeah, you took a time machine. And then when these people now in this reverted dark age come across these things, their thought process is the only way these things could exist is if giants existed to build them. Because there's no way that a man, a normal human being could have built that. So that's what it kind of reminds me of, is like this feels like maybe we're in the dark ages of this world where there was a great time before, and now it's almost just like, you know, it's a work of the devil to get a bridge that we would look at and take for granted for them to have it. So it kind of reminds me of that. As a history fan, I've always kind of heard that story of like people in the Dark Ages just being like, there must have been giants because there's no other way that this archway could even exist. Like it's impossible to build this as a normal person. So
Zach says in the chat, Sunshine Skyway Bridge. Look it up. Many people have jumped from it. On the coast, west coast of Florida, St. Petersburg, I'm guessing is what St. Pete. Alan says it's beautiful. I looked it up. Yeah, it's one of those bridges that just has the pillars, but it doesn't have like the Golden Gate where it's just the big cables. It's got lots of little cables. So when it says like spider web, I think that's what he's.
Oh, okay.
So a little bit more along the lines of what is being talked about here.
Yeah. What's the George Washington Bridge? Is that any different than the Golden Gate in terms of construction? Well, it has the big ones and then the small ones kind of going down the sides, but it's definitely, I don't know, like I said, it's just one of those things. It's easy for us to kind of take for granted all these different kinds of things. I mean, these big giant buildings we create and stuff, and it's just it's insane. It's
so funny. I actually had an instance of that, but it wasn't a.
Okay, I'm seeing that bridge.
Yeah, it's. You see what he means? Like it looks like almost like the first picture I saw on Google doing a search, it was like finer wires. Like the Golden Gate just has like the big wires, like that. So but I actually had something happen recently that was a natural occurrence here for us here in Utah. I have a baseball subreddit that I follow just for baseball, like Major League Baseball here in America, and someone took a picture of the ballpark down in downtown Salt Lake, and it captured the Rocky Mountains in the background.
Yeah.
And they're like, there's still snow on the mountains, but it's spring baseball, guys, here in Utah. And someone's like, holy hell, how do you get anything done with those beautiful mountains outside your window all day? And I'm like,
I don't even notice.
I'm like, holy shit. And there was a lot of people from Utah who had visited or lived in Utah that were like, it's breathtaking, but you get used to it. Like you just get used to it.
Take it for granted.
That's exactly what you're talking about.
I have to tell myself to like notice the mountains half the time.
Hell, the theater that we go to when we go to see movies, the one by your house, like they're just it's literally right over there. When we walk out of it, it's literally got an open space where there's nothing in front of it because it's got the huge parking lot, and you just bam, mountains. And if we come out and it's like sunset or the perfect time of morning or night or something like that, you catch those mountains, and it does catch you off guard because you're so used to them.
Yeah.
And I imagine that's what people in New York are like, and San Francisco and LA and all these big cities. We got London and Paris and all these different cities across the world. You just get used to hell, people in Paris. Yeah. what, the Eiffel Tower? Oh yeah, I forgot that was there. You know, that kind of thing. Big Ben? Oh yeah, I hear that thing. And, well, fuck that thing. You know, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And you're right. It's something that people can just get used to without even thinking about it.
Yeah, so it's interesting to see it from these different people's perspective, because for them it's a work of the devil
It's
type
the work.
stuff.
It's the work of the devil.
Yes, indeed.
A bridge.
Yeah,
I don't know why, but that really like caught me this time reading through when we were doing our prep, and it's like, yeah, the bridge. Like a spider, and it's the work of the devil. And I'm like, a bridge? All right, like I guess whatever you say, Talitha.
yeah. Okay, so moving over to subchapter 10. The rest of the story was but another version of a tale Roland of Gilead had heard many times. So this is just a quote straight from the book, because I thought this was really well written. He had heard many times and had in some measure lived through himself. It was fragmentary and incomplete, undoubtedly shot through with myth and misinformation, its linear progress distorted by the odd changes, both temporal and directional, which are now taking place in the world. And it could be summed up in a single compound sentence. Once there was a world we knew, but that world has moved on. And I just think that's just masterfully written by King, so I wanted to just call that one out explicitly there. So, and also just because it's brilliantly written, but I feel like also this paragraph is a perfect encapsulation of everything of Roland's world that we know up to this point. It feels like it's just an absolute nutshell of everything that King has done in the last 2.5 books for this world. Is just that paragraph, specifically that compound sentence there is whatever, and it's great. And also what I love about this, I'll get to that in the next section, but
okay.
Yeah, that's what the next note, but that's what I want to say here is this is just a brilliantly written paragraph. I love it, and it's just what a way to. I couldn't synopsize this if I tried a million. If I spent 100 years trying to synopsize in a brief sentence like what Roland's world is, I could never do better than this.
It's such a depressing line as well to hear Roland's world just be lumped in, Roland's home be lumped in. I mean, with this, it's just like, he's very familiar with this, and it's he lived through it himself. It's it's just moved on. It's gone. I mean, think about that. I mean, how hard would that be for you to find out that where you grew up is just gone?
Yeah.
And to be so blasé about it that he's seen it so many different times.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but this one always stuck with me that from the first time that I read it, that every time we come back around, I come back around to this one and I read it again, I'm just like, God, that sucks.
Yeah.
Like legit, this is one of those times where it really caught me off guard, and I was really feeling sorry for Roland just to hear that. Yeah, well,
yeah.
Mine too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, oh yeah, this is filled with myths and legends, and
Yeah.
that happens because your history's gone and your world has moved on. And I'm starting to come to the point here, like my first time reading, that the world has moved on is not a pleasant phrase.
No.
Like
No,
we've had hints of that throughout 2.5 books now. Like you talked about earlier, we're halfway through this book. 2.5 books now, we've got a hint of that's not a great phrase. This just kind of like proves it to me that it's just like, yeah, that phrase means your world is fucked.
Yeah. Yeah, Mike has a perfect one here. In my mind, I've been trying to think of another good example. And he says it's probably common refrain from Europe in the Dark Ages during the constant outbreaks of the Black Plague.
Yeah.
I think that's the perfect, because in my mind I was thinking like whether it's 9/11, anyone our age, you talk about like their story, and it's like every single one, where the story's going. I mean, if that's the topic, right, of what's going on, in my mind I'm also thinking historically, it's like if you were talking to a bunch of people that were survivors of Hiroshima or Nagasaki, like
or Pearl Harbor,
no matter what story they're, no matter how their story's winding, it's coming to a certain conclusion, whether they or their family survived or didn't, like, or whether even if it's a written account, whatever. It's just, and I think that the Black Plague would be a very apropos one, because it was so universally felt. I think every other example I could think of in my head was just all so finite. It was all like cool, like your experiences of watching 9/11 on TV, like it's, it has an impact, but it's not the same as like the whole fucking world, like almost half the world dying of a disease.
Exactly.
Like that's insane. So
the world has moved on is coming to me, is starting to become a phrase to me. It's like if you started a movie that I knew nothing about, you're like, hey, I'm going to show you a clip, and you start a movie and it says Germany, 1942, and I'm gonna be, and then it shows someone with like the Star of David. I'm gonna be like, oh
Yeah.
shit.
Yeah.
That's what this is equating to for me now. It's like the world has moved on. I'm just like, oh fuck.
Yeah.
That's what instantly what my mind goes to now is when I hear that phrase. When I get to this point,
Yeah.
my first time reading through, that's where I was just like, this is not good.
Yeah.
That phrase has become like a bad omen for me.
Yeah, definitely. Like, I have a bad feeling about this.
Yeah, no, you don't ever say that. Don't ever say that. Bad things always happen when you say that.
So it's a good reason to say it then, right?
No, Tad, no.
So next up here, Roland is familiar with the story, a civil war in a nearby land around 400 years ago that rippled out and pushing chaos to the surrounding areas. No one was able to stop it. Armies withered away in confusion. Travel went from an inconvenience to a near impossibility, and communication ceased from the city over a century before. So kind of just a nutshell of kind of what we're told here. And this is what I think is just a genius way for King to write this, because it's telling us how it went in this area, but to make it to make it familiar to Roland, and the fact that he's so familiar with it, it's equally giving us an idea of more of what Roland's past looked like.
Yeah.
So like, we've kind of been given a little bit of hints here and there of Roland's backstory, but in a lot of ways, this might be the most in-depth element of Roland's backstory that we've been given, and it's not actually about Roland's backstory.
No, and that's the part.
But that's what I love about that. It's like the familiarity. It's like cool. So it's like it's the same story. You know, for Roland, it's like it's always the same story, which means his story is the same. Which means all this depressing shit we're hearing about this region, now you can kind of color in a little bit of Roland's background, and I think that's just such a fucking genius way for King to write this. Is like we've been given pieces and hints, we've been given small throwaway lines and stuff, but now to then paint in a good chunk of Roland's backstory by somebody else telling their story, dude, fucking brilliant,
but still very frustrating that we still didn't actually get any of Roland's story.
No, yeah, not like I don't mean his like specific story, but I just mean in terms of like filling in the past of like, okay, like at one point he was basically in like this palace and his dad is essentially the king, and he's watching a cook being hung. Like there's all this, and it's like then we get to him chasing a guy in the desert. Like there's a lot missing there, and this is actually, maybe it's not like like what is it, Bob Ross, like you get to a point where you're actually painting the happy little tree, but before that you've got to like paint the background. You got to
put where the tree belongs.
And it's like I think that's what we're doing here. You're getting kind of that background build. Kind of setting the scene for, at some point, hopefully we're going to get the rest of Roland's actual story.
And see, that's what had me like chomping at the bit while you were talking there, is because it's like, give me that story. I want it. Like hold on, I want this story.
Yeah, but it's just genius.
Yeah.
Just Stephen King. I bow to the king. And then the fact that it happened 400 years ago does call into question how old Roland is. I get that the blackout after the Golgotha was a long period of time, but it still seems Roland might be unnaturally old. Because if it's like ultimately if this is happening in this region 400 years ago, like you might say, cool, this is away from the center area, which you would assume Roland's area was probably a little bit more central, and I guess you could assume that the fall might start at the edges and move in, but still, is it going to take that much longer to get to Gilead? So it's just like, this is where I'm starting to like question, like reading it the first time, it's like, wait a minute, how old is this guy?
Yeah, how old is he?
Like there's some inconsistencies here that aren't really making sense.
Yeah.
Which is always one of my favorite things in movies and stuff, when there is a character that's like unnaturally old, and when people start to like piece it together. It's always one of my favorite little things. But yeah, it definitely makes me start questioning it, where it's like 400 years, wait a minute. And so it's just like, okay, what did they give you a sense it's almost like 100 years with the Golgotha blackout?
Yeah.
Like, so it's like, cool. So there's 100 years of it accounted for, but there's still a couple hundred years there where it's like,
this dude's not exactly like Gandalf the Grey, like ancient looking, hunched over fucker.
He's not Aunt Talitha.
No, exactly.
So, it's definitely strange. And then the next up here, Sai says the last time that they sent tribute, which is kind of a little bit more of the feudal system, was in the time of his great-grandfather, and the journey was dangerous and costly, and when they reached the castle, it was deserted and broken. Outside the city was a field of bones with 1,000 or more skulls littering the field, with armor which painted with like the red color of the armor as well. His grandfather then returned, one of the few that did return, but died of radiation sickness when of one of the few people that actually returned. So definitely kind of an interesting and very bleak. Talking about, you were just talking about like the world moving on.
Yeah.
Like, you know, imagine living in like kind of that feudal system. You know, you're going to do a tribute, and then like the whole castle is deserted, and there's just like a field of bones.
Especially in the feudal system, that's who's supposed to protect you.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, if you come under attack, you send runners to your lord. And, my lord, Tad, we're being attacked. I must put on my armor and go defend my subjects.
Yeah.
You know, kind of thing. And to find it wasted.
Yeah.
Just, like, it says 1,000 or more skulls littering the field.
yeah.
That's just unreal to think about. That many dead. Mike says in the chat, Roland is too stubborn to follow the rules of time and space. This is true.
That might be true.
This is true.
And then the note I have here is the radiation has been alluded to before by Eddie and Susanna. One of them basically asked, like, you know, your predecessors like blew everything up, like, and kind of just like everyone else, right, in the late 20th century.
No.
Like, there's
No, Mike, don't suggest that.
there's just that element that the second half of the 21st century, everyone's mind is fixated on the atomic bomb. So, you know, both Eddie or Susanna or one of them called Roland out. It's like, your old people fucking blew everything to Kingdom Come, didn't they? And I think it was Eddie.
Well,
that sounds
we've
like
we've also seen muties and stuff like that.
yeah.
Which is
There's definitely plenty, but this is the first time like that it's been full on called radiation, I believe.
Yeah.
Like, we've seen some speculation from Eddie and Susanna about nuclear fallout, whatever.
Right.
But this actually saying radiation sickness is what Cy says is what they call it. Kind of is,
I see what you're
is
saying.
interesting. It
It's
perks your-
in world that someone's saying
It's
it, not outworlders
yeah.
bringing their lingo in.
exactly.
I gotcha.
So for them to actually say that is super.
Never caught that before.
Yeah, that's super interesting to me. They also ask, because they asked if Roland's world nuked itself. This is a crazy picture because it's also emerging of like the feudal era stuff,
Yeah.
with castles and tributes and field of death that would be fit a feudal era
Right.
battle, right? That would be normal. But then also on top of it, you're adding radioactive fallout. Like, it's
Yeah,
just such
so
a
you got
weird.
a combo of like France versus England back in the day, like the invasion of England by France or vice versa, and then you add in nuclear winter, fallout, radiation sickness, and muties from that.
Yeah.
Like, wait, what?
Just it's,
like,
it's definitely a very strange
Yeah.
strange bedfellows here in this section.
yeah, Mike was sorry. Mike said, "My lord, Tad, save that sound clip." LOL. No, don't give him ideas.
And I'll turn it all like bassy, so it's all like
My lord.
all Sithy.
Yeah,
That-
my lord.
That's true. Thank you for the hint there, Mike. And then Alan says space time is curved.
Yep. And he says, "Mike, thank you. I almost spit water all over. Spit take."
And then going on here, Cy then tells about watching people usually following the beam and going to war that is endless in Lud, and mentions the drums. Roland asks about the war, and Eddie asks about the drums. They call them the god drums, and the war was Harriers versus the people of Lud, who were trying to protect their city. The people of the city used old weapons, which are guns, but also more than that, such as explosive weapons, which allow the city folk to hold off the Harriers, even though they are far fewer in numbers. Essentially, Lud was the last stand of the old world. Anyone able to travel to Lud and the city dwellers in the city, or anybody that was able, did travel to Lud basically for a refuge, and the city dwellers allowed any that could add to their society to stay, but forced any unworthies to move on. Every park in Lud had been turned into farms. The Greys were the older people trying to siege the city, and the Pubes were the young people defending the town, and the name stuck even as their defenders got old as well. So it's kind of giving us the background on the Pubes and the Greys, and also kind of gives us dude, I mean, that's just a badass, like, not necessarily a good thing. It's pretty dark, but it is kind of a cool, it feels like it would be a fun siege movie.
Yeah.
Again, so there's not much sign that they should hope for much from this town, but I have a feeling that Eddie is still being selective about what he has for his hopes built on. Like,
Yeah.
you know, because that, like, dude, after hearing all that, dude, you have to at this point just admit, like, this is going to be bad. But I just have a feeling Eddie probably isn't there.
No, yeah, and Eddie still is thinking about. Eddie's thinking about like the people that are holding out now. Even though they say that it's overrun, he's still
Yeah.
thinking about that.
Yeah, indeed. And then do you have a note here?
Just that with the that one. I think I pasted my note in the wrong spot for this one.
Oh, okay. This is pretty depressing, but it's so damn interesting. I would totally read or watch something covering this bit more in depth. This is kind of one of those things like, man, if King were to write an entire story just on like this whole thing of Lud and just really expanding it, I'd be interested as fuck to read that, because it's just, I know we're just going kind of really brief overviews here, but this stuff's super interesting to me.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then let's see here. Going on, then 90 years ago, in the lifespan of Sai and Aunt Talitha, a final siege was laid on the city of David Quick, or by David Quick. The force was considerable as they began riding through River Crossing at dawn, and the whole of the army wasn't through the town until nearly sundown. This army built a pontoon bridge and flanked the city. Now the defense is non-existent, so basically they were able to get some foothold in the city, and now the bridge is no longer being guarded, and both Grays and Pubes hold part of the city and skirmish over turf. The Ted is told that both sides would desire Eddie and would want Susanna if she was fertile, but they would lust for Jake, which that is not a happy thing there.
Just expanding on what they were talking about earlier.
Yeah. And then Roland sees Jake remembering being under the mountain again, and Roland let's see, and then Roland they would just kill, like, as they're kind of going through and telling, like, you know, what their desires would be for each of these characters. They would just kill Roland out of hand. Eddie could go either way. Jake would be the most desired. Susanna, if she could be bred. So yeah, really give us the lay of the land of what Ludd has and what's going to be in store for our characters. And also, I think it's just got such a good way to write it, because really, if you didn't have someone tell them, how could you unfold this?
Yeah.
All this stuff, like with them just entering the city, like, because the content wouldn't know. So
Right.
it's like, how would you actually unfold this? Like, you really need these characters to, like, unfold this story.
Yeah.
Otherwise, the whole thing would just be kind of like a confusing mess for readers, I think. So
Absolutely. And then right here with Jake remembering the passage into the mountains and another version of the slow mutants. Did you think anything here with Roland? Because I sure did. I had the, don't you fucking dare do it again. Don't you dare do anything to this boy, Roland. I swear to God.
Well, he did just promise him not that long ago that he wouldn't let him
This is true.
fall again. So, yeah, that's I guess we'll see. But yes, there is definitely a thought there. I do love that it's Roland's perception to see that Jake's thinking that. Like, Jake has that look on a look on his face, and it's enough for Roland to kind of discern probably what he's thinking about. But of course, Roland has a shared experience of it, so it's not like it's a mystery to him. And then the last bit of this subchapter, Jake asks about Blaine the Mono and Engineer Bob, as we move into subchapter 11 here.
Yeah. I found out where my note was supposed to go. I had a note about how when they got back from trying to pay tribute, they realized that they were kind of on their own. And then instead of repairing the town, as, you know, things started to dilapidate and started to wear out and everything like that, they let it fall to ruin. Their town, River Crossing, not the city of Ludd.
Yeah.
So that when Harriers were passing through to Ludd,
Yeah.
they wouldn't bother them.
wouldn't
They would
stop,
go
yeah.
and hide, and they actually dug under the church. And it says here, the townspeople hid in a large shelter they had dug beneath the church. And this just, I don't know why, but every time I hear this always just sparks in me. You ever heard of like those secret like clubs, those dance clubs and stuff, where you go to like the back of a store? It's just like a laundromat or just like
Yeah.
a normal
I mean,
store.
It's like a speakeasy.
And then you pull open a painting or a poster
Yeah.
or beads, and you walk into this huge dance club, and there's
So
techno music and everything like that.
there's a bar in town called Prohibition.
Oh, really?
And you go in, and it's this little thing. There's a couple displays or whatever.
Yeah.
And then I don't remember. I think you have to get it somehow. But there's a password, and if you get that and then you say it, they push something, and a shelf opens, and it goes down into the whole bar.
And then you go down into the bar. You
Yeah.
see exactly like that.
Dude,
Yeah.
I mean, the only thing that I wish it was like actually like, you know, breaking the law, and it wasn't like, you know, getting around maybe Utah's stupid alcohol laws. But unfortunately, it's not. It's a legit establishment. But it is fun, certainly.
That's what came to my mind, and that's the note that I had there that had me a little bit confused. I pasted it just a little
In the
bit
wrong spot.
Yeah, in the wrong spot.
And then let's see. Mike here says, let's see. And then Alan says, I love this scene and this part of the story. Yeah, me too. This is great stuff for
Great
sure.
world building, right? Like,
Oh, yeah.
about the wars in the past and the history and everything.
Yeah. And then Mike says, Eddie should have known that in the fiction of his day, advanced civilizations aren't friendly or helpful. Logan's Run, 2001: A Space Odyssey, The Empire in Star Wars, etc. Yeah, there's certainly
got a point.
yeah, there's plenty for Eddie to probably at least be suspicious. But the thing is I think what it really comes down to is it's not about logic here, because there's been plenty of breadcrumbs to show Eddie that he shouldn't be hopeful, and he still is. So I think this is more about Eddie's hopeful disposition than anything else. But
Yep.
let's go ahead and jump on over to subchapter 11. What do
Yeah,
you got?
so the subchapter 10 ends with him asking about Blaine the Mono and Engineer Bob, and Eddie says, Engineer who? And they move on.
Yeah.
They just kind of ignore Engineer Bob after that.
yeah.
So Cy answers at
But
last.
more suspicion about Jake, though.
Yeah.
This time from
Oh,
Eddie,
yeah,
where
yeah.
it's just like, wait a minute. What's this kid going on about?
Yeah, exactly. And it was Eddie who asked.
Yeah.
Not one of the old people.
Yeah.
Eddie's the one. It's like, so he doesn't even know what the hell his own companion's talking
Yeah,
about.
which is good for us to see that
Yeah.
line, because I think it's easy for us to kind of forget that they haven't got on the same page yet.
Right.
None of these people, like Jake is kind of an outsider. His story hasn't been shared with them. They haven't shared their story with him. So we really don't have a cohesive
Mm-hmm.
team yet. And I think it's easy for us to overlook that because we're privy to all of it.
Right.
You know, we said that in the second book too. There was one point when whether it was the 3 characters or 2 characters where some backstory was shared, and it's like, oh yeah, shit, dude, I kind of forgot that this other character doesn't know that yet because
Doesn't know.
I know it all, and so it's easy to just forget that
They don't.
Everyone doesn't know,
Right.
So yeah,
So Cy's actually the one that speaks up and answers and tells him that there's a single track that is set high on a column. This causes Susanna to cry out about a monorail. Blaine the monorail. Jake mutters that Blaine is a pain. Just under his breath, like a little freaky kid. Roland glanced at him and doesn't say anything.
I mean, all kids are freaky.
That's true.
I mean, Children of the Corn, Danny Torrance, like that's
Red rum.
kids are just creepy inherently. That's why you never see a time when like kids are treated creepily in horror movies that it doesn't work. It always works. Damien. I mean, every time. Find me a time where you're just like, oh no, I never bought it. That kid's just too adorable. No, they're always like, okay, that's fucking creepy.
Yeah.
I mean, Danny's a cute little boy, but still, when he starts going like this and freaking writing shit with freaking yeah, it's fucking creepy.
Yeah.
Kids are creepy.
Kids are creepy. That's Tad's quote of the day. Kids are creepy. So Roland takes note that what Jake said, that Blaine is a pain, but doesn't say anything. Eddie asks Cy if it's still running now, and they tell him that Cy says that it hasn't run for years, but it has during his and Aunt Talitha's lifetime.
Which is interesting because now you're bringing it within 100 years or so. So
Okay.
yeah, you're just
Okay.
it's funny how the timeline is kind of is shifting here. Let's see. So I was not sure when reading this the first time what Blaine or Charlie would be, but this makes it feel like there would be a good chance that but now there's a good chance it won't even be running anymore.
Yeah.
Like, because again, like there's the cover of the books, whatever, and we've had all this hints about Blaine and Charlie, but now suddenly it's like, I mean, you look at it from technologically, it's like, okay, it's been in their lifetime, but it's like, cool, if that's 90 years ago, like that may not run
Yeah.
anymore. Like technology doesn't
If you leave a car sitting for
a couple years. I mean,
not even a couple months, the battery will die.
Or that, yeah, that's true. Yeah, but if
Like I remember my our mechanic. You showed me this mechanic. I remember him getting on me when I was like, "Yeah, I don't drive this car as much," and he's like, "You need to. It's
Yeah.
not good for the gas to sit. It's not good for the battery to sit. You need to
Yeah.
make sure that you're driving it like once a week. If you
Yeah.
leave it sitting for too long, the battery dies."
drive it around the block if you have to.
It's exactly go to get groceries. That's what he told me. It's like
Yeah.
instead of taking your brand new car to go get groceries, take the old one so that it gets moving and
Yeah.
everything like that.
Yeah,
Hell,
so-
humans are even the same way.
Yeah.
You can't just lay in bed forever. Your muscles will atrophy.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's just interesting to think that this train's been sitting for
A chunk of time.
their lifetime, but they don't say when.
Yeah,
Like, when
we-
I wasn't a boy, I was an adult. They
Yeah.
don't even say that.
Yeah, indeed.
So Cy tells him about the coming of the mono, which is a very, very interesting section because for me, I always forget that it's up on a column on a rail
Yeah.
above. What is it? Chicago's
Chicago's
that has
that way,
the
yeah.
raised rails.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that. I think here in Utah we have
It's on,
trains.
it's on the level of the street.
Yeah.
It's not under like New York. It's not above like Chicago.
It's
Ours is on the street.
on the street.
Yeah.
Regular trains, and then we have our transportation system around the valley. It's called tracks, which is a light rail.
yeah.
So I always have to remember that. And it says that it sounds like a gunshot, and it's really long, 2 wheels long. And he's all like, if you can believe that. He's all
Yeah.
like, remember, I know it's crazy, but that's
I've,
really what
I've
it
been
is.
stuck at some tracks with some trains that were longer than that.
You're like, you sons of bitches.
And these ones aren't fast, so
No.
there's been times I've sat for freaking like I think the longest I've ever sat was like it was legit like 30 minutes.
Yeah.
For a train to freaking completely.
I had one that had a mix-up one time on a family vacation. We sat for 45 minutes. Like people legit were getting out of their cars and like stretching out on like the hoods and like sunbathing. 'Cause it was summer vacation, you
Yeah.
know. They legit were like just like All right, it was up in Idaho, so it's like
Stupid trains.
they're just like kicking back on their hood of their car. It's like, da, 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 and I'm like, is this a normal thing for you people? Like, what the hell? Like, I
Yeah.
want to go.
Yeah, indeed. It angers me.
So and it was gone before you could. The mono is gone before you could properly see it. It came when the weather was foul or the air was low. It shrieked like a harpy, and it's that's
fun.
That's a fun image to think about. And then it says that it was like the trumpet they say will raise the dead from their graves at the end of the world. One of the twins says to tell them about the bang that followed. Sai tells them of how it's quiet for a few seconds after the mono passed, and then an explosion knocked things off shelves and even broke windows, but no flash or fire from the explosion were ever seen. Eddie gets Susanna's attention and mouths the words, "Sonic Boom."
Yeah.
And I stopped here with this subchapter because I wanted to make a note of this. This one snuck by me on my first couple reads. Not even my first read, but my first couple reads. I just didn't appreciate actually how fast that is. Japan's LO series maglev is the fastest train, and it only goes 374 miles per hour. Only. A sonic boom happens at around 750 miles per hour for an aircraft. Now, the reason why that's important is because the air resistance plays a part. So an aircraft, the higher up it gets, the faster it has to go to be able to create a sonic boom. So down here, I think I have it backwards. Down here, it would have to be going even faster to create a sonic boom. There is no train that comes even remotely close to that.
I mean, we don't even make planes that go that because like they
it's like stealth stuff.
Because there was some commercial airliners that
the transatlantic stuff,
you know, that broke, but then like it got to a point where it became such a hassle almost for people because like a sonic boom when the planes and like going over your area, like it turned into a thing where it's just like, okay, we actually have to slow this shit down and just stop.
We only can do this over like the ocean's the only place we can do this.
Yeah,
because there's not stuff that we can.
Yeah,
damage.
the Concorde,
Mike. The Concorde, that's the one.
Yeah,
that's the one that goes from Europe to America, right across the Atlantic.
Did they? I didn't even know if they do Concords. I thought they stopped doing that.
But what it did is what I mean.
Yeah, I mean, they tried to. Yeah. I think they were. Yeah, there was a thought of doing it everywhere, but yeah, the whole sonic boom thing kind of screwed up the whole thing.
But I also wanted to point out this here. Okay, so we have these people who, and I think this is what Mike was kind of referring to earlier.
Yeah, Mike said not anymore. Yeah, I didn't think so. I thought that it was a pretty short-lived thing.
We have these people here who are talking about a train who creates a sonic boom, but they find it so just ridiculous that someone would fly.
Yeah, I get. Yeah, exactly.
That's what Mike was referring to.
Yeah, the whole dichotomy of like, you know,
this is crazy. No one could ever fly. Not even the great old ones could fly. This train, fast as fuck.
Like us, we have technology to have our cameras fly now. You know, just fly cameras around.
Fly a drone around. Exactly. And just imagine if someone came to us and was like, yeah, you know, my robot does that. You're like, what are you talking about? Robot? No, we don't have robots. It's like, oh, you don't have robots. Interesting. Oh, well, we have robots. Wait, what is that thing up in the sky? Well, that's an airplane. Oh, my God, you people could fly? It's like, wait a minute, you're talking about robots, but you don't have... So it's just interesting dichotomy that they have one thing that just goes, like, super fast, but they can't imagine someone flying.
Yeah. It's pretty ridiculous that we get into these like multi-ton steel tubes and actually get them to fly off the ground and travel all over the planet. That's insane, dude. Just again, don't take it for granted and actually think about it. It's fucking insane.
It's insanity, dude.
It really is.
It really is. The wings don't flap like a bird or anything.
They tried that.
They did try that. I've seen the videos of that. It's ridiculous looking.
You got
a little bit more in this subchapter. Yeah, sorry. Roland asks if they have been describing the mono as coming towards them from the city and back towards the forest that the quartet had come from. They affirmed that was what it is. Wouldn't do them much good if it was going that way. I mean, they already came from there. They don't need to go back that way.
Go in the wrong direction, yep.
And right at the end of the subchapter, a new voice speaks up and says that there is another mono that goes away from the city in the other direction. And that's where the subchapter ends. Just this strange voice saying, aye, there is one.
Yeah. Oh, King. Splitting these subchapters the way that he does.
Yeah.
So over to subchapter 12. We have Mercy comes in and says she wants to hear the palaver and wanted to hear Roland's voice. which that's a little creepy.
Well, she is blind. I mean,
Yeah, no, certainly. She says her ears are still sharp, and Roland tests it by tossing a bullet to Susanna, and Mercy hears it and calls it out. Not only that he tossed something to someone, but she also guesses who he tossed it to, and she guesses correctly. I think the only thing she has wrong is what it was. I can't remember. She say a biscuit?
I think she says a biscuit. I got it right here.
And then says that one of the monos has run less than a decade ago. So now we're drawing in here.
Oh, really?
Now we're going from 100 years down to inside the last decade. So that's it's getting a lot more promising, perhaps, because I think like if you've got a mass transit system of some kind, even if it's like supersonic crazy, if it's ran within the decade, I would have a lot more hope that it may run. So I guess my emotions in terms of like if I'm kind of trying to follow Eddie's mind, my emotions are running high and low when it's like, 100 years. I'm like, okay, it's probably not going to run anymore. Then it's like, within 10 years, I'm like, maybe.
What you're saying is there's a chance.
Yeah, exactly. She says that she heard a hissing, but not the sonic boom, except for once. It makes sense to Eddie that the train would be starting, so it wouldn't be at full speed. Eddie likes the idea of a train ride. Then they argue about when it might have been. Mercy thinks that the mono is dead. Roland is not so sure. So again, there's a lot of this whole group of people. They're kind of they like to just there's a little
disbelieving as well. There's also a part about I honestly can't believe I didn't write this down. I was just looking over what you were asking what she said was tossed. She does say a biscuit.
Yeah.
Someone gets all upset at her about going away from the city of Lut is the wastelands, and nothing can live out there. And she even points out, well, Trink doesn't get sick, stupid.
Yeah.
You know, that whole business.
Yeah, train's not alive.
Yeah,
so.
it's not alive, so it's not going to get sick, you idiot.
And is that the first Wastelands call out?
Title of the book?
Title? He said the title. He said
the title.
And then not sure if it's because of Jake's feelings about it, but this whole thing makes me uneasy reading it the first time. Both the city full of evil people who would love to enslave all but Roland, who they would kill, and this insanely fast train. It could have been the cover that had kind of like twisted me a little bit, but there was just something that felt very eerie about this whole conversation the first time I read it. Again, I don't know what it was. Maybe it could have just, honestly, whether it's the Jake's final essay, Jake's nervousness,
well, it's always,
or I mean that evil freaking skull face train that's on the cover, which I'm reading that book. So
whichever one you're looking at, it like you can.
I had both the two on the right, so I had which are the two train ones. I've had both of those covers. So
I've never seen the other one until we did this show.
Which one?
The one on the left.
The
Watchman. The door.
Oh yeah. I hadn't seen that one either, but the two train ones I had seen both. I think I had both of those covers in different times. So whether it could have been any of those things polluting me, but there was something that just made me feel super uneasy for this whole thing, and just like all this talk of like these trains in the distance and these sonic booms. There's just something about it that just doesn't feel right to me. I don't know. Just I remember that the first time, just being like, this isn't good. I don't like this.
Surprised you're not knocking on Eddie again here, being all hopeful in this section again. There's a whole section here where he's like, well, yeah, like it makes sense that Mercy would hear this and they wouldn't. Her ears are sharper, but you wouldn't hear a sonic boom because it's going away from them.
And then it's
got to get up to speed as well.
And that's kind of what they allude to, is that there's basically like the like when it's only when the wind is really low and stuff that you'd be able to hear that sonic boom, which explain why she's only ever heard it once. Whereas
when it's
other times
times
she's heard the beginning of it going, but she's never heard the sonic boom except for the one time.
Yeah.
Which makes sense because that would have been a time that the air is still. We've all seen that. Anyone that lives in a place with snow, things just suddenly
sounds so different.
Yeah, it's so different after it snows. Like you could hear things, like it just everything sounds quiet, so it feels like you could hear things from further away. I don't get why that is, but it is. So
there's an effect that is called. I looked it up one time because it was bothering the hell out of me. I took the garbage out after like a heavy snowfall. This was 3-4 years ago. Do you remember that storm we had where it dropped like 1.5 feet of snow in like 2 days?
Yeah,
like
I love it.
There was talk about people like not going into work, and there were businesses that were like, no, don't come in, it's too dangerous.
Yeah,
there was hundreds of accidents across the valley.
Yeah,
I think they were even like 700, like high hundreds. And then I remember taking out the garbage, and I just remember walking out and just being like, because there wasn't many people out on the road, and just being like,
Well, see, the good thing
Holy
is,
fuck, this is weird.
the good thing is then if a beastie was coming up on you, you'd hear its clicking nails.
No, I wouldn't hear its clicking nails. I'd hear the snow.
Well, if somebody had already like plowed anything
on
like
the
you'd,
sidewalk?
you'd hear it on the side, or you'd hear the crunching of the snow as the beast was slowly coming up on you.
No. Stop it. I already have bad enough phobias when I go out to throw away the garbage that there's like a monkey in a crate sitting next to it or a werewolf behind it. Stop it.
Yeah, it's good fears to have. You never know.
You're
You've seen enough horror movies.
the
So
worst.
let's go on over to subchapter 13.
Lucky 13?
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, indeed.
So a half hour later, we find ourselves in the town square. Looks like we're getting ready to go is what's happening. Now we have the whole town of River Crossing has joined the quartet, and most of them are just staring at Roland here.
Yeah.
And it's Susanna who's having this thought, and I actually want to read this here. He's a living remnant of a past they only know from stories, Susanna thought. They look at him the way religious people would look at one of the saints, Peter or Paul or Matthew. If he decided to drop by the Saturday night bean supper and tell them stories of how it was, traipsing around the Sea of Galilee with Jesus the carpenter. Just that image there of Roland, because this is not just
it puts it in perspective in terms of what they may view Roland, because we don't. I mean, he's been our main character so far, so I just think we could even take him for granted. But how other people view him is, I just think that's masterful for King to write the way that he wrote that, and the fact that it's coming from Susanna, for her to encapsulate that, it's just a perfect touch in terms of to give us an idea of what that would potentially look like. You know?
Yeah, exactly.
It puts us in their shoes.
And it's not just the ancient leaders and everything like that are here. There's a group of, I think it's about 20 people is what it said, that's gathering around. And there it says the ritual that had ended the meal now is repeated, which we didn't exactly cover in the last one, so I'll go over that. Everyone shakes hands with Eddie and Susanna. All of them kiss Jake on the cheek or forehead, which is just awkward as fuck if you're a kid.
Yeah.
I'll tell you right.
At least it's not cheek pinching.
Oh, cheek pinching was the worst. It's
Yeah.
the worst.
And there's
It
a lot
really
of old
is.
people here, so those are the cheek pinchers.
Jake got off lucky here.
Yeah, he did. He did.
But still,
indeed.
getting kissed by complete strangers is still awkward enough.
It's awkward, certainly.
And then for Roland, they kneel before him for a blessing or touch. So, again, back to the Jesus the carpenter kind of thing, like a prophet kind of thing.
Yeah.
When Mercy comes up, she throws herself into Roland's arm and asks if they won't stay the night, and Roland politely refuses and says that they do have to go on. So, Aunt Talitha comes last. As she begins to kneel to Roland catches her by the shoulders, and I cringe at that every time because I'm just like picturing like this old frail woman and Roland catching her and just
Yeah.
like, snapping her in half, you know. And then he says that she shall not kneel, and that then he kneels before her and asks for her blessing as they go on their course. She gives him her blessing and removes a silver cross from around her neck and puts it on Roland and asks him to lay it at the foot of the Dark Tower and speak her name, Talitha Unwin, and she finishes by telling them to stand and be true. This is one of those scenes that King does so well that if you took it word for word and description for description to an adaptation, that it would just be chilling and beautiful.
Yeah.
You just bring the scene up. You got all these people standing around. People are shaking Eddie and Susanna's hands. They're giving Jake a kiss on the cheek.
And it feels ritualistic.
It's very-
So I think that's where almost there's some beauty or some awe that comes from something when you know it's a ritual.
Exactly.
You know, like there's just something different. Like if it was just like, oh hey, like, and it's not like, I guess it's almost like heightened rituals, because like a ritual of like, oh, we shake hands and then say goodbye type thing. Like,
Yeah.
we don't really put a lot of thought into
It's
that.
like,
but when you start to elevate it and it becomes like a religious thing or like some kind of
like a wedding party.
Yeah.
Like you have the bride and groom, then you have the parents on either side, and then you
Yeah.
have like the bridesmaids and the groomsmen and stuff like that. And then you go
Yeah.
through and, oh, I'm so and so, I work with the groom. I'm so and so, I work, and you
Yeah.
go along the lines and everything like that. Then you get to the groom and hey buddy, and you give him a hug. That's very similar to what we're seeing here. We're having different reactions. But like you said, it's more religious than that. This is I've never been to a Catholic church. I've never seen mass or what's it called, where the body of Christ and the
like communion.
communion, the blood of Christ.
Well,
that
you just
kind of
watched
thing.
Midnight Mass. So.
I did watch Midnight Mass. I should have known.
And I just watched the tail end of Godfather last night. So baptism.
Baptism. I mean, I grew up LDS, and there is the sacrament in the Mormon Church, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, that's done differently than the Catholic Church. And there is a formality to that, and a very like quiet, somber. And I'm telling you, if this is done, like I said, word for word, description for description, if they just took this and put it onto film,
Yeah.
it would be chilling and beautiful at the same time.
Yeah. You know, in terms of rituals, the one that I've probably done most recently personally is the Ritual of the Customs.
Oh, going through the customs?
Ritual of the Customs, as
Yeah.
Roland called it.
Yeah.
Still one of my favorite little cute Roland things there.
Where, yeah. The ritual of the customs. For us, it's going through security. at
Yeah,
customs.
exactly.
Yeah. And then the last words that she says, stand and be true. Dude, that's like straight up out of the Stand.
Yeah.
Like that's almost like a direct
Like
quote.
her
isn't it?
face just turns into Mother Abigail.
Yeah.
Stand. It's like, what the hell just happened there?
Roland puts two in her
The,
bed.
the other, like multi-hundred or over 100-year-old woman.
What's with King and 100-year-old women at this time when he's writing?
I don't know. But yeah, and then what I have here is this is one of my favorite small scenes from the entire story. I'm not sure why this small request seems so heavy and profound with the cross, but it really does. Also, I remembered stopping at this point when I first read it and just stopping and just in my head hoping to God that King didn't forget this, because I understood looking at the overall thing, I understood there's like thousands of pages
Yeah.
between now and the end of this story, and I assumed that the tower would be at the end of the story. I think that's a safe assumption, that it's not just going to be like, oh, surprise, in book 4 here's the tower. Like, I just
surprise, motherfucker.
that's not going to happen. So it's like I just remember stopping and just like almost having like a prayer where it's like, please, King, do not fucking forget this, because
Right.
this is just, there's something about this scene that's so like just heavy
It's
to me,
powerful.
that like I would be real, it would really ruin the ending in a lot of ways for me if he did get to the tower and there was absolutely no mention of the cross, no mention of Aunt Talitha. So I just remember that from the first time. But yeah, this is one of my favorite things, and I just felt as profound as it was, though it does seem like a small moment even in the time you're reading it for the first time. So I could easily see why it might be overlooked, especially because I understood. I didn't know everything about the series, but I did know that King wrote them over the course of a number of decades. They weren't all written like all at once or anything. I kind of knew, because like by the time I was jumping into the series, the last book had just been published.
Right.
So like I understood like, oh, the first one came out in like 82. Again, I didn't understand the whole 1977 thing, but 1982 is when that was republished. So from 1982 to 2004, I understood, okay, this series spreads.
Yeah.
So there was just an element of me, there was just like a little fear in my stomach where I'm like, God, King, please don't forget this.
It would have been really disheartening if you got to the end of it and there's
Yeah,
just
yeah,
forgotten.
yeah.
Well, not even the end, but whenever they get to the tower, because I understand what you're saying, that it's not going to get dropped in book 4. Maybe it's dropped in book 5, and then we find out that there's a greater threat, or whatever.
yeah,
But if he had forgotten this,
Yeah,
that
that-
would have been so disheartening.
yeah. That would be that. I just remember thinking that the very first time, where it's
Yeah.
just like, God, King, do not forget this.
Yeah, exactly. So Roland rises and asks if they're ready to go, and I love this next line. Roland says, "Ready?" Roland asked. Eddie nodded. He did not trust himself to speak. All right, Roland said, "Let's go." Dude, I could just see Eddie being all choked up and just not, after the beautiful blessing that Aunt Talitha asked her at her request, and giving the cross and everything like that. Oh, there's even a part I forgot to cover this and make a note of it. Roland even tries to refuse the cross because he's like,
Yeah.
"We're not here to take things from you."
Yeah,
That is so like Knight of Arthur,
yeah,
like Arthurian legend. Like, "No, my lady, we are not here to take of thine bosom. Like this is not for us to take from you."
yeah.
Stuff like that. It's so regal and so like I can't think of the noble.
Yeah, noble, knightly.
for him to just be like, "No, I can't take this from you," and everything like that.
Yeah,
And then Eddie's obviously like all choked up and everything like that, like very similar to how I would be.
yeah,
They start to walk, and as they reach the end of the street, Eddie looks back with Jake. Jake raises his hand and bursts into tears. Eddie comforts him and says, "Hey, it's Ka." Jake says Ka sucks, and Eddie agrees that it sucks hard. Sounds familiar. I swear that I've had this conversation before with Eddie and Roland on the beach somewhere.
Ka-ka.
Ka. Exactly where I was thinking.
Yeah.
It's just interesting to see like that we're one book removed from Eddie being in Jake's shoes, saying that it sucks.
yeah,
Jake's sobbing, and he's like, "Ka sucks." It is
Yeah.
exactly how King puts it in the book. And
Yeah.
it's interesting to see that Eddie's now taking on that role
Yeah.
with Jake instead of it being. How much colder would it have been if it's had been Roland saying that?
Yeah.
You know?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Eddie's certainly a warmer shoulder to cry on there.
Exactly. Big brother.
And then let's see. Over the last few years, we've talked a lot about areas of the story of the Dark Tower across the board that echoes Lord of the Rings, because obviously Lord of the Rings was an inspiration for this.
Wanted it to be his Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, so in a lot of ways, I think this to me feels like the departing of Rivendell. It feels like there is an element of the story that took place before this, but there's kind of a way that you can kind of look at it where that was all just like, I don't know, like foreplay, you know, and like the actual journey and things are getting way more serious now. Like in Lord of the Rings, right? Rivendell through the rest of the story
is the Fellowship.
It's way more than it was from the Shire to Rivendell. And maybe this one feels a little bit heavier than that. There's a little bit more that's gone on in the first part of this journey, but there does still, this whole thing felt like Rivendell. I mean, you also have a bunch of really old things. I mean, the elves weren't like physically or physically old, or they weren't blind and shit, but like the elves are the ancient creatures, and they kind of had their palaver or their
Council of Elrond.
Like, it's just a lot of this feels like we talked about it, and I think we missed this when we were talking about elements of this story that might be like echoes of Lord of the Rings, and this is certainly one in my mind. Is it feels like a lot of this feels beat for beat, even like people coming in out of nowhere and speaking up that weren't really supposed to be part of the conversation, right? Merry and Pippin, and then you had Mercy that just kind of inserts themselves and actually is somewhat helpful.
We're coming too, that kind of thing.
So it just feels this feels very Council of Elrond and Rivendell, and the departing here feels like maybe this is kind of like stepping out into like what is probably going to be the rest of this is going to be
the adventure.
Yeah, there's going to be no more like safe stops, most likely, like kind of like Lord of the Rings. Like you may find some friends, but it's a lot less likely at this point because now you're moving into the darker realms.
Not even the darker realms, also, but another similarity is that you're moving into territories that are active hostility zones.
Yeah, exactly.
Hostile areas where people are actively trying to kill other people. Certain groups are trying to kill other groups. That kind of thing.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to see that. I mean, they just spent 4 or 5 subchapters describing how Lud is basically the last bastion of hope, the last Gondor. Basically, if you want to take it in the Lord of the Rings comparison straight across, it's the last beacon of humanity. It's the where farmers had to go. They took people who thought like them.
Yeah.
Everyone else they turned away. All the orcs, if you will, that kind of thing. And then it finally fell.
Yeah.
And everything, and that's that. And so, I mean, obviously Gondor never actually did fall in Lord of the Rings, but this is King's version.
Yeah, exactly. And this is it is certainly different, but I do think that echoing wise, where we've talked about over the years, the last couple of years, the question got brought up. I can't even remember who brought it up, but somebody brought up the whole question of like areas of the Dark Tower that replicate Lord of the Rings in some way. And I think this is certainly one that we never thought about back then, but I would say
absolutely.
This feels very Rivendell to me.
Absolutely.
So, jumping over to subchapter 14. So they make it 7 miles before the sun begins to go down, and they begin to gather wood. Jake questions why they couldn't stay since they didn't make it that far.
It waddles.
Yeah, and they're all still stuffed. None of them want to eat. I don't even think Oye is eating because they're all still stuffed from the feast. Eddie wisely points out that if they had stayed, they might never have been able to leave, as one chore would lead to another and another and another. And then Eddie realizes he feels like he is sounding a lot like Roland, which that's got to be a hard pill for him to swallow. Essentially it would and then essentially what it boils down to is it would never be easier to leave than it is right now. It's always going to get harder. So that's a rough thing. And then my note here ultimately is this part's probably a tough one for me to accept because it made sense, but I barely accepted it. But I always have had a soft spot for older people. I always remember like back in like grade school and stuff when we would do like the sub for Santa type stuff, and like I was always the one in the class that was arguing like to hell with the kids, man, let's pick an old person, like screw kids, I care more, and I've always felt that way. I've always had a softer spot for like old people in like retirement homes and stuff.
Did you ever
whatever.
Did you ever do that volunteer where you could go read to old people.
Yeah, things like that kind
Yeah.
of stuff's always. I've always had a soft spot for older people and stuff, and I've always liked older people more than young people in general. So this was a tough one for me. This would have been a tough one for me to accept, and I would say that if I were in Jake's shoes, my arguments would have been a hell of a lot more vigorous against these arguments here.
Sure.
Even though I understand they're correct, but the emotional side, I think I would have been a lot more forceful with my arguments than Jake was about.
This is where you'd be more like Eddie than ever before. So you'd just be your heart would be out on your sleeve, and you'd be no, fuck that noise. Like, no, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, exactly. And again, not that I'm saying that would be the right thing, because I do agree with what Eddie's saying, but that's where I would have been coming from if it were me.
And this is just another one. We literally just had one in the last subchapter, and we have another one here where Eddie recognizes it this time, but how great is it that we get this from Eddie instead of Roland?
Yeah.
Like, if Roland had to give this to Jake, man, Jake probably spends 2 days crying.
Yeah.
But Eddie softens the blow and makes it, hey, look, man, I understand where you're coming from, and I feel just as shitty as you do, but
Yeah.
dude, we can't get bogged down trying to help every single Tom, Dick, and Harry that we come across.
Yeah.
That's struggling.
Yeah.
Like, we can't do it, man. We have a thing we got to do.
Yeah. Mike says Lud seems more like Moria than Gondor, which I think that's correct. That's a great.
Oh, that's a very good comparison. That's even better.
Yeah, because again, Moria, you have this idea going in that it may
it's
be
going to be safety. It's going to be great.
There's going to be meals, and there's going to be
Gimli is Eddie. Yeah, exactly.
So, and of course it. It doesn't turn out so well. We have plenty of writing on the wall that Lud's not going to turn out well. So
Yeah.
I don't think it's a spoiler to say that maybe much like Moria.
Well, no, it's like what I said earlier. Aunt Talitha's warning Eddie straight to his face. Like,
Yeah.
hey, this is a dangerous fucking place. You
Yeah.
want to avoid this at all costs.
Yeah, you should go around.
And Eddie's still like, electricity, eh?
Yeah.
Ooh, buttons.
You know what it comes down to? Eddie still just wants some fried chicken.
God damn, he wants some fried chicken. I feel really bad because there's a KFC like a block away from us right now, and I'm just like, man, if I could just get a box and just send it through a door for him.
Did you see the bucket fell?
Yes, I did. That was crazy.
From that one that's right here?
Like,
Yeah.
fell into traffic.
And the thing is, there was no wind that day.
It just fell.
It literally just fell. And this is like one of those. I don't know if every KFC has the same size bucket on their sign.
Yeah.
But this was a massive fucking bucket.
It was
like
huge.
this thing could have easily just like gone over the top of like a smart car or like a any kind of small vehicle. It could have just
Yeah.
like gone and just like covered the vehicle without even damaging it.
Yeah.
So this thing was huge, and it just literally fell into like a pretty busy road.
Yeah.
And there was no wind. So yeah, that's pretty crazy.
That's
Tangent.
This
but-
doesn't feel safe.
yeah, it's like, god damn, like what the hell? Like, was that thing put up there with like duct tape or like no? Because
Well,
duct
how
tape,
long has it been up there for?
yeah, duct tape would have held better than that thing did.
Yeah.
So then next,
I wonder if KFCs around the world do have the bucket like we do. I'm curious. Go
I mean, I
ahead.
think they all have some kind of bucket on their side. I just don't know if they're all the size of that one because that's an older restaurant, so an older KFC. So then they set up camp. Susanna is setting the wood just as Roland showed her. I think another little good sign about the student that Susanna is.
Yeah.
And Roland says that if you look too much at the small and close rights, the larger and more distant rights will be lost. So he's basically saying helping 20 or 30 in river crossing could cost 20 or 30,000 down the road, and the Dark Tower is really the only place to set all things right. Jake asks what the Dark Tower is, and Roland, and of course me, my ears perk up really heavily there because I'm like, wait, what? Yes, please answer this question. And Roland says he can't answer that and wishes that he could, but Eddie sees the clever answer there because Roland said that he couldn't answer, and that was far from I don't know. So
Yeah.
Eddie is kind of catching the lawyerly Roland talk there.
I plead the fifth.
Yeah, very, very. Because was it Roland or Court that mentions it at one point, like a lawyerly answer where it's like it's so close to the truth that it hides in the truth's shadow or something like that.
I think it's Court.
Is it?
I
Yeah.
think. Is it Court? Yeah.
Yeah. And then it says, my note on this is for the greater good is essentially what this comes down to. Not really the argument that ever feels the best in the moment. Also, another one of those fun little things that cast our doubts on Roland and how truthful he is being. Because I think we kind of get these small little things that King will just throw in to just give us some us as readers to doubt maybe Roland's truthfulness, commitment, to maybe doubt the safety of the people in his care. King just keeps doing this to us, and this is another little small one that he throws in there with Eddie kind of catching the lawyerly answer where Roland kind of like, I can't answer that.
And my note here is my question for you is, do you think Susanna caught it or just Eddie? I think Susanna is smart enough that she might have caught it as
if
well.
she's paying attention.
I think it's just Eddie is the one that really
Or
catches
is
it.
she paying attention? She's
true.
setting the fire and
Oh,
stuff.
that's true.
so-
She might just be occupied. That it's just
Yeah.
That's why Eddie catches it.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's kind of how I
Okay.
pictured it. So, all right. So jumping over to subchapter 15.
Yeah, so this starts off. They have a light supper of greens and water that they're still so full, and I can vouch for having felt this full. Me and you went to lunch yesterday before recording our hangout and everything.
Yeah.
Dude, I did not eat another meal that day.
Oh, yeah. When I go to that place, man, I only eat once the whole day. That's it.
That was 11 o'clock in the morning. I didn't eat again that entire day.
Yeah.
I finally ate again literally 24 hours later.
Yeah.
That was
That's-
a robust meal.
that's
so
what I
I
do,
know
yeah.
exactly how they feel right here.
Yeah.
Even Oi won't eat. I think you already mentioned
Oh,
that.
yeah.
Jake tries to give him some scraps and he won't do it. And I love the exchange between Jake and Oi here. Jake gets all butthurt. Why didn't you talk? You made me look like an idiot. And so, of course, Oi talks. Idiot. Go ahead and hit the Oi button for me.
I mean, oi.
Yeah. Roland comments on Oi is starting to sound more and more like Jake, and he's sounding smarter and better and everything.
Yeah.
Roland says he thinks Oi was bitten by another bumbler, but was driven from his pack by his fellow bumblers. And Eddie makes this fucking comment that they probably got sick of his chatter.
Yeah.
And of any of all people to make a comment that
Is
they got
that-
tired of it.
Yeah, I was
It's
about to say,
like-
maybe that's just experience there.
Yeah.
You know, I'm sure Eddie's been driven out of some groups because of his mouth.
Right?
Seems about right. And then for me, I pointed out this is the classic thing in film or television when we in the audience and then one character knows that someone can talk or something or someone can talk or that it's alive that shouldn't be alive, but the character can't get them to do it around any other people. You know, like it happened 100 million times, so it just feels like the classic thing. So I love it, but man, it's frustrating. Like it reminds me of Child's Play. You know, when Andy's trying to get Chucky to he talks. Like. He told me to do it and stuff, and it's just like, dude, kid, you sound crazy. But we as the audience are like, I know what's going on.
What size
here.
straight jacket do you wear again, kid? Like, let me just hook you up here.
Yeah, but it's a classic trope.
Oh, yeah.
So I love it for Oi too, because it's not necessarily that Oi is like 100% or whatever. But yeah, the fact that he has been talking and then he doesn't talk there, and then it frustrates Jake. I love that. That's just classic.
Okay, Mike put a word in the chat. What the hell is that?
Snuffleupagus.
What is that?
That's the elephant thing on Sesame Street. The like the
Oh.
furry elephant thing. So I don't think they kept it long term, but in the earliest days of that, Big Bird saw Snuffleupagus and no one else did. So they all
Oh.
thought he was crazy. And I think by the time we started watching, I think Snuffleupagus was like open to everything, or like everyone could see him. But like for the early, like I know my mom's told me like when she was young and watching it, like Big Bird is the only one that could see him. So it's
Snuffleupagus?
yeah.
I didn't watch Sesame Street.
Really?
No.
I mean,
I thought it was stupid.
when you're young though, it's fun.
No, when I was young, I never cared for Sesame Street. I did not like Elmo. I thought he was annoying as hell.
Yeah, but I feel like Elmo wasn't even that big when we were kids though.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like he got really big like when we were a little bit older.
Oh,
He
okay.
may have been around, but I don't think he was
I
near
just,
like the.
I just remember the launch of Tickle Me Elmo.
yeah,
just being
and we were
"Ugh."
older at that point. I'm talking like preschoolish, like when I was watching.
Mike
and
says
stuff,
he's a good
so.
10 years older than you two, so that fits with what you were talking about.
Yeah,
So
yeah. So, and maybe I'm
That's
wrong.
interesting.
Because I will say I didn't watch it as hell. I think the biggest one I watched a lot was Mr. Rogers. Way more. That was
I
one.
didn't watch a lot of PBS. I watched like cartoons and like.
Yeah, I mean,
Dude,
I
I'll
watched
tell
all
you-
that too.
I'll
but-
tell you, my earliest memory of TV was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Man,
Yeah, and I watched all
Frickin'
that too. but-
Michelangelo, Raphael, and Donatello and Leonardo were the shit for
Yeah.
me.
Oh
That
yeah.
was-
I mean,
that was my jam. It's like
yeah.
they had Sesame Street on. It was my sisters. I think my sisters watched it, but it was for me. It was like I'd rather go outside and play.
Yeah.
But if they had Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles on, or Batman the Animated Series, or something like that on,
Yeah.
hell yeah, I'm there.
Yeah, but yeah, that is a good call. Another one of those, where someone knows something,
Yeah.
and the audience knows, but then nobody else does.
There's one like that in Harry Potter, but you, the audience, are still just as mystified as well. The character, they don't explain it to you, the audience.
Oh, is it Gary Oldman?
No.
Okay. Anytime we're Harry Potter, I have to ask if it's Gary Oldman, because that's literally like my only.
It's not Gary Oldman, Tad. You should just watch the movies or read the books to find out.
You know, like if they come out like, oh, Harry Potter's parents, is that Gary Oldman? No. All right. Every time I've got to ask because I know he's in there. I know he is. He and MacGruber, or Hans Gruber, I'm sorry. Not MacGruber. Hans Gruber's in there too, isn't he?
Yeah, he's Professor Snape.
Okay, that's what I thought.
So Eddie mentioning that they probably got tired of his chatter. Roland actually says that it's possible, and that it is the first time that Eddie has made a joke that Roland has said that it's a possibility. I just wanted to point that out, that it's interesting that Eddie makes these half-assed jokes,
Yeah.
and then Roland's like, yeah, it could
Yeah,
be. Huh? Like,
Yeah.
It always kind of catches me off guard when
Yeah.
Roland does that. Even now,
And do you
like,
think it pisses Eddie off because it's undercutting his joke?
he's like, God damn it.
Yeah,
That was
It's
a quality joke, you son of a
it's
bitch.
ruining it. It's stepping on his punchline.
Yeah.
Like it's one of my favorite things. If like somebody tells a joke that I'm not really super like immediately fond of, is I'll like try to step on their punchline in some way because I just love how people react to that. It's just because they'll get pissed.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's one of the things I like to do.
That's because you're a dick.
I think Mike says something about you're talking about you.
Is that why the school is so dangerous?
Why? Because Gary Oldman's everyone,
Yeah, Gary Oldman is every character. Even
including like inanimate objects.
a suit of armor
Yeah,
in the
it's-
castle.
he could do it. If anyone could be those things, it could be
That's-
Gary.
This is true. So then the drums start up, and Eddie says he does recognize the beat, that if you take away the guitars, it's ZZ Top, and it's either Sharp Dressed Man or Velcro Fly. I just love the exchange here with Jake as well, because he's like, Velcro Fly, that's a stupid name for a song. And then Roland says it's time to roll over. And this is one of those things that I just love, the little things that Roland says for things that we do. Like, okay, it's time to go to bed. It's
Yeah.
time to go to sleep.
Hit the hay.
Hit the hay. Nope, his thing is time to roll over.
Yeah.
It's just one of those ones that just, I always like to notate those little ones that Roland
Yeah.
has.
Yeah, indeed. I always love the time stuff because, like right here, Susanna doesn't know anything about ZZ Top. It's kind of the fish out of water stuff, but the time stuff is it too. It always tickles me because they're all from different times, and in some cases, I mean, Jake and Eddie are closer in time, but there still is almost a 10-year difference. There's a 9-year difference between the two.
Yeah.
But there's also a difference then, obviously, from Susanna. But hers is so much more extreme, right? Because what's Jake, 77 and she's 63? Because it was just months out. Or,
He actually
no,
says
64.
No, he
Early-
says actually 63. that
No, it's
they
early
would-
64 because she talks about months after the assassination. She gives how many months there was after JFK's assassination. So we calculated out when we were in that section of the book. It's literally the very beginning of 64 when she's talking to Andrew, her driver.
And he actually says 63 in the book.
Yeah, that'd be a mistake then because it was
Yeah.
because she did. She says how many, or she either tells us months or she tells us days. Even she tells us like it's been 60 days since he was assassinated. Like since the assassination, like there's something to give us to where we as history fans can go, okay, she was in 64, so 64 to 77.
If he was assassinated on November 22nd.
Nah.
Hey, no, we got to point out: is it our Earth? Our level. We don't know. But he says, I mean, they probably did, but in 63 they would have been just a bunch of kids going to school down in Texas. So okay, so he's not saying.
I guess I'm saying when she's taken, because 63 would have been her last full year
exactly
on Earth before she's pulled into Roland's world. But yeah, certainly. But I love this stuff. All the time stuff always cracks me up. It is kind of the fish out of water.
Yeah,
we saw it with Roland in book 2 when he was gone, when he went through all the different doors, and when he was experiencing our world. That shit was hilarious to me. It was some of my favorite parts of the Dark Tower movie was the Roland fish out of water stuff, and this stuff feels very, very similar. If it's not the exact same thing, it's at least related. Is the time stuff, and we'll probably see more of it as we go on, but I love it. It makes me giggle.
So Eddie asks if it's time to exchange stories. Roland says soon, but not in the dark. And I actually wrote down a question. I have a question for you here. Why do you think that is? Why can't they tell their stories in the dark?
I think I'm going to trust Roland. I mean, remember, we've talked about the dangers of the fact that he talks about machines that can be possessed. We've seen demons. I think there's plenty of things to tell us. If Roland says it's not safe, all right, Roland, I believe you.
And that's what I was wondering.
It's just a story.
Is this him trying to protect the children and not let them have bad dreams and stuff like that? Or is there an actual danger here?
No.
You
Yeah,
know?
nope. No, I absolutely do not perceive that it's about dreams or bad dreams or making it to where that people can't sleep. No, I interpret that as there's
an actual danger.
There's potential danger to it. Yeah.
That's what I was thinking. Too.
Yes. Yes.
It's interesting that could easily slip by people. Is that it's just like, no, not now. I'm too tired. Roll over. You know, not in the dark. You know, that kind of just like a flimsy excuse. I mean, hell, I've done that with my kid. You know, like not tonight. We don't have time to do that tonight. We'll think about it tomorrow. That kind of thing.
The Stand does that. When they start, that one group starts to talk about Flag for the first time.
Like, nope.
They stop the conversation. Like, no, we can't do this tonight.
Yeah.
We can't do this in the dark.
Yeah.
You know, and they save it for the next day when it's light. Like,
Yeah.
there is power in stories, and and like maybe less so in The Stand because that's just our world destroyed by a disease.
Supposedly.
But this is a different world. And yeah, I 100% with everything we've seen so far, there is nothing that would make me think that Roland doesn't mean legitimately there's like a safety issue with
Sure.
telling these stories in the dark.
So Roland rolls over and just instantly goes to sleep, and Eddie's all kind of perturbed by that, just like fine, just like that. Eddie and Susanna have a cute little exchange and everything like that, and they lay down and go to sleep. But Jake stays up and he can't sleep. He's got his thoughts, and he even thinks about the pubes dancing to Velcro Fly and working themselves into a sacrificial killing frenzy, which is an awesome thought to have
That's
as a
fun, happy
kid
thought.
on the side of the road
Yeah.
in a strange world
Yeah.
where you've seen demons and shit like that. And okay, that's great. So his thoughts turn to Blaine the Mono, a train that can cause a sonic boom, and it leads him to think about the book Charlie and the Choo Choo. How Charlie's expression is supposed to be cheery and pleasant, but somehow wasn't. And if Engineer Bob had sabotaged the other train to give Charlie his second chance. Right then, around then, the drums stop, and then Jake can finally go to sleep.
And see, I think Jake's just slandering poor Charlie and Engineer Bob here.
Yeah, I think you're crazy. I have that book. He is absolutely not a pleasant-looking dude.
I think one, I think he is just a happy, innocent train, and two, I don't think there's any sabotage involved here. I think that's all. It's all speculation and hearsay.
I don't know how it would get water in its diesel tank. Just saying.
Mike says, "Speak of the devil, and he doth appear." Probably is a legal requirement on Roland's level. Yeah, I just think there's legitimately. I mean, at the same time, when it comes to the whole story thing, though, I will say, I'm the reverse. Like if you're out camping, the best time to tell ghost stories
Oh,
in the
absolutely.
middle of the night around the campfire.
Is there ever a better time?
Or not even ghost stories, but beast stories. Like you got to tell stories
No.
that could actually affect someone. Like if there is some kind of like a story you have about a killer in the woods, or
That's
there
why
is like
everyone
some.
always tells a story about in these very woods.
Yeah, exactly. The Friday the 13th thing.
Yeah.
Or, it's a bear or it's a werewolf. Like something that, because it can't just be like, oh, then like this mad bomber bombed this building and you're in the woods going, oh, cool. I'm as far away from that as I can possibly be.
I'm all right. So 20 years ago, there was a rabid bear in these woods.
Yeah, exactly. All hopped up on cocaine,
That's a real story.
Yes. The movie's coming out this year, Cocaine Bear. I cannot wait for Cocaine Bear. That's one of my most anticipated movies of the year.
You're up.
Okay, so subchapter 16. So Jake dreams, but not of the Plaster Man. But he's on the road to Missouri with Oi, with the train crossing nearby. Then a large pink bullet of a train is coming, and Jake is filled with fear. He is, and that also, I'm just going to pause real quick and say right there, Ringwraith maybe?
Yeah.
Filled with fear as they approach. He is remembering lines from Charlie. Then Oi jumps on the track, and Jake freaks out and jumps to Oi as the pink bullet bears down on them. Then he wakes up covered in sweat, grasping for Oi, who squeaks when he is touched. Which I think that's just a fun little descriptor there, is that Oi squeaks
Yeah.
when awoken.
I've done that with animals.
Did they squeak?
I've had an animal squeak when I woke them up.
It's like the most adorable little thing that.
Just a little like,
I mean, I guess he is just a little varmint,
hey,
like a raccoon or something,
No, he's a bumbler.
Oi.
Yeah.
Okay, so
I like.
I have to point out here what a great horror scene this was that was just written here.
So good,
just absolutely terrifying, terror inducing for the reader, and this just feels to me like quote unquote stereotypical King, and where this shines through in the Dark Tower, like what most people visualize King is he's just this master horror writer. We know he does other things, but ultimately he's always going to be known for his horror. And I always tell people The Dark Tower isn't really horror, but there are elements of horror in it.
Yes.
This has certainly got to be one of the most
Oh yeah.
best examples of horror.
Even though we know it's a dream,
Oh yeah,
it's still
like,
terrifying.
I instantly forgot when I'm reading that. Even the first time, or even like now on rereads, you instantly forget that it's a dream. It's just like it has like that weird like dream feel to it, but at the same time, that doesn't seem to reduce the danger at all,
Yeah.
or the fear. So yeah, really well done there by Cy King. Then it goes on here and says Jake thinks that Blaine is not just a pain, but extremely dangerous. Then he remembers another aspect of his final essay: Blaine is the truth. And then he comments on how much of a mess this all is and falls into a dreamless sleep. So I think that's what it really comes down to is Blaine is a pain and that whatever. And then like I guess that line of the essay is pertinent because then you're at this spot where you may doubt like maybe Blaine isn't real. Maybe it's just whatever. Maybe it's all just smoke and mirrors and we won't actually run it. But then it's like, no, Blaine is the truth. Like that's kind of undercuts all that where it's like, no, it's like, no, that thing's real and you are going to probably run into it is kind of what I think Jake's feeling there.
Yeah.
So King is doing a great job of hyping up Blaine, basically this whole book, as we're likely approaching him. This feels like the first 10 minutes of Silence of the Lambs, where basically the whole 10 minutes is spent doing almost nothing but establishing Buffalo Bill as a killer, but then the main thing it's doing is hyping up Hannibal Lecter, to the point where I think as the audience, if you've never seen it before, you're hyped to a frenzy where by the time you first lay eyes on Hannibal Lecter, you don't know what the fuck you're going to see.
Yeah.
It might be a wolf man. It might be just an absolute fuck. I mean, of course, then they upset it and go the other direction. He's just this,
Good point.
this nicely dressed in a jumpsuit that looks like it's freaking tailored, and he's all polite and shit. But it's like the whole first 10 minutes of that movie is just hyping the fuck out of him. And I just feel like that's really what feels like King's been doing with Blaine this whole time, this whole book. In small ways, it's taken some more time, but that's the movie thing that came to my mind where it's like, this feels like Hannibal, man, because this Blaine's getting hyped to hell, and it's good.
And that's where I really started getting worried about the city. Like my first time through, I remember this right here is where I really started getting worried. Dreams are a powerful vision thing. Roland says that earlier on with Eddie.
Yeah.
In this book.
Yeah.
And it's just like it's one of those things that now I start to get a little bit worried because the city had me concerned and everything like that, but it was okay. Well, we still have the 4 of them together, the 5 of them together. Roland's got this. Eddie's got this. Susanna's got this. Jake's got this. Ollie's got this. Like they're together. They're going to be able to handle this. That kind of thing.
Yeah.
But if their goal is the mono, and the mono's the problem, he just ran down Oi and Jake in Jake's dream. Well, what the fuck are they going to do then? Like, if the train's bad, well, then what are they doing? Why are they going towards? Go the other fucking way. Like, go around and do something else. Like, and that's where, for me, I just really started having like a sense of dread now for these characters that I love.
Yeah.
Especially, like I'm at this point, I'm like head over heels for Eddie my first time reading. I adore the hell out of Oi. And then Susanna and Jake are great. And then Roland. So
you're coming around to him slowly.
I'm coming around to him. He's not being this huge pile of shit, but it's just he did rescue Jake, and he promised never to drop him again. Doesn't know if he'll keep that promise, but it's still this is the moment for me where the weight dropped in my stomach, where I'm just like, oh fuck, what's gonna happen? Especially with King, you never know what's gonna happen with King. I mean, hell, he's already tossed one kid down a cliff.
Yeah,
off a cliff. What's going to happen next?
Yeah.
And that's this is that moment for me, was where that existential dread settled in for these characters. I'm just like, oh shit.
Yeah.
So that's the end of subchapter 16. In subchapter 17, they get up and they go on, and they reach the spot where they can see the bridge for the first time really well. Like they saw the the bridge before,
in the distance, and the city in the distance.
The city in the distance, and then they can see like maybe that's where a river goes. Now they can actually see the bridge. I think of those shots like when you come up in like what is it, Golden Gate State Park, where you can come up over a hill and you can see the entire Golden Gate Bridge from like a hilltop nearby. That's what I'm thinking about. Maybe not as close, but and everything. Eddie stops and gasps and everything, and he asks Susanna if she recognizes it, and she nods. And then he asks Jake, and he's like, holy shit, that's the George Washington Bridge. And he's like, yeah, absolutely. What's it doing here? And everything like that. there's an interesting exchange between Jake and Eddie here that I wanted to talk about, where Jake goes, "What's it doing in Missouri?"
Yeah.
What he exactly says is, "But what's the GWB doing in Missouri?" Jake asked. Eddie looked at him. "Say what sport?" Eddie looked confused. Mid-roll, I mean, you know. Eddie was looking at him harder than ever. "How do you know this is mid-roll? You weren't with us when you came to that marker." So again, this is like the 4th or 5th time in just this book club episode that Eddie's been like, "What the fuck is this kid? How the hell? What?
Yeah.
What? How do you know that? You
Yeah.
know, that kind
Yeah.
of thing." He's got something he's not telling us. Stuff like that he, and everything. Jake stuffed his hands in his pockets and looked down at his moccasins. "Dreamed it," he said briefly. "You don't think I booked this trip with my dad's travel agent, do you?" Roland touched Eddie's shoulder and said, "Let it alone for now." Eddie glanced briefly at Roland and nodded. I wanted to mark that because, for fuck's sake, for once Eddie listened to Roland.
Yeah.
Like, thank God, and everything. So as they stand looking at the bridge, we switch to Roland's perspective, and he starts to see that the condition's not too hot.
Yeah.
He sees gaps in it, and then he sees that it's tilting. And then actually, this whole rest of the subchapter, I actually wanted to do a sound clip for it. So, you got that ready to go?
Yeah, let's go ahead and take a listen. Well, we had a sound clip there from our just overall a good sound clip.
It's one of the reasons why I had to have a sound clip here. Is
yeah,
that's from our intro.
One of those is from
there's
the
a
intro.
reason that's there.
Yes.
Great line. I love that line. We're done traveling for today. It's time for we had our own palaver, and I think it's going to take a while. And I also love that he just, all right, walks off.
Yeah.
It fucks right off and goes over to set up and do whatever he's going to do.
Yeah.
This is a huge exchange for me here because there's so much to digest that Eddie finally burst out what he's been thinking the entire time at River Crossing. He finally comes out and is just like, "Dude, tell me that I'm crazy, that I shouldn't hope." And Roland actually, and it literally calls out that his kindness always surprised Eddie when it comes out. No, it's never wrong to hope. But he says it earlier. Eddie, dude, use your eyes.
Yeah.
Like, use the real world to set your expectations. Don't just hope for fairies and unicorns
Yeah.
when you can clearly see that there's a fucking dilapidated ruin over there that we have to cross.
Yeah.
You know, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it because Roland's challenging Eddie's cockeyed optimism, and at the same exact time, Eddie's challenging Roland's pessimism. And it seems like the absolute embodiment of these two's relationship is this friction, because
Glass
they
half
are
full, glass half empty.
Yeah, they are just the absolute opposite of people. And, Susanna's a little bit more in the middle, a little bit more measured. I think she can fall on both sides at different times. Jake, I mean, who knows? He's just a kid.
We haven't got a feel for him
yeah,
yet with the cartel.
Yeah, we haven't got a feel for what he's going to be like in this whole thing. He was definitely a little bit more pessimistic and grim in the first book, but I don't think we've been seeing the exact same Jake in this book that we saw in that one. So, I guess part of it is this Jake hasn't died, technically,
He hasn't been
right?
ran over,
he remembers that, but it didn't actually happen to him. So maybe that's part of it. But yeah, he doesn't seem as bleak as that one. But ultimately, Roland, Eddie, it just feels like that's kind of that opposites attract thing, and that's going to always be a source of tension and friction in this story is these two here.
Yeah.
Mike says, didn't Roland say dreams can be sent by the other side to confuse you or something like that? Sounds vaguely familiar.
It does sound familiar.
Yeah. But yeah, dreams are definitely interesting things. Because, Roland called it out. Because was it Eddie that because it was Eddie having dreams
about
earlier in this book. And Roland's like, no, you have to tell.
There's power in dreams.
There's power in dreams and stuff. So definitely dreams are not just your normal run-of-the-mill thing that you could just ignore here. So that's a happy thing to remember with that Jake's dream that we just covered too.
Choo-choo.
What is that dream?
Yeah.
Foretelling potentially. So that is it for the normal section here. So we are then going to move over to the spoiler section. So the screen is going to change. If you're on the YouTube side, it's now going to be bright red. And we are now warning you on the podcast side that if you want to avoid spoilers, if you're not finished with the 7 primary books of the Dark Tower series, this is the point that you want to check out. Go ahead and stop the podcast. Maybe after you're finished with it, you can come back and listen to this last tail end here. Majority of the podcast has already been recorded, but we'll have a little bit of some spoiler discussions here. So check out now. If you go forward, you're accepting any spoiler risk on yourself. It's not our fault.
Yep.
So what do you got here?
First off, Aunt Talitha is always one that I forget about when Roland gets to the Dark Tower.
Yeah.
Like, every time he gets there and starts to call out the names and everything like that, I'm like, oh yeah, Aunt Talitha, the cross. Oh shit, I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Because all the other ones are so much fresher in my mind.
Yeah.
I mean, from here on, we got book 4 where we have all of his, Cuthbert, Alan, Jamie DeCurry, Susan, the girl in the window.
This feels 100 years away from that point.
So much further away.
I will say it's one of the first things I think of.
Yeah.
And I thought of even the first
just
time.
Opposite.
It's just because, again, it was such a profound, this scene that we covered in this chat, in this freaking episode, it was so profound and so heavy that it's like, it weighed on me. And like, maybe not that I was thinking about it the whole time, but that moment that he crests that hill and sees Cancon O'Rea and the Dark Tower, instantly I'm like, the cross, Aunt Talitha. I don't know why, but that was just, again,
really,
in terms of minor scenes.
That's so interesting. Minor
scenes of the series, that's probably my all-time favorite minor scene.
Really?
So, yeah, it's just,
wow.
It's there's just something with it, man. Something, I don't know if it's the way that King wrote it or whatever, but yeah, it is like, if we talk about, of course, we're going to have our scenes with Blaine, we're going to have Charyu Tree, we're going to have all these scenes that are going to come, they're going to be these massive scenes, Algo Ciento.
Yeah.
But, of course, our hero Flag dying, but the Aunt Talitha for minor scenes, like, because what are some of the other minor scenes? Like, there are some, but like,
well, it's always depending on what you consider a minor scene. One of the ones I love when it comes to minor scene is the same thing with this, is world building. Dude, I fucking love Grandpa Jafford's story about the wolves and the stand of the 4. The 3 guys and the 1 girl with the Ryza. The Ryza or Riza? Ryzas.
Yeah.
Against the 1 wolf that they're able to take down, and how he survived and everything like that, and what they were.
Yeah.
Dude, I fucking loved. Loved that moment, because, dude, tell me that's not like a moment where it's just like, oh, build up, that kind of thing. This feels more like
Moses Carver.
Another
that's
Tech Corporation.
That's probably the one that actually challenges this for one of my all-time favorite like small scenes. Is the Moses Carver Roland meeting is one of my, because really, honestly, what's in that meeting that's actually that important to the larger story? Like, the watch isn't even that important as we go on. So ultimately, that is kind of a minor scene, but it is a fucking scene I love. But I do think I would, and maybe it's because we're at this scene right now. Maybe when we get to the book club for the 7th book, and we're at the Moses Carver, maybe I'll say it differently. But right now, I would say the Aunt Talitha is the one spot, and then Moses is number 2.
One of my all-time favorite small scenes, if we're talking even smaller, not even like world building or anything like that, Eddie's put down of fucking Calvin Tower, where Roland's just like, no, this is your boy, you take care of him. That bit, and then Eddie just fucking full on gunslinger mode.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, he's already taken down Blaine. He's a veteran gunslinger now. He's fought the wolves and everything like that. But his verbal beatdown of Tower always gives me chills, just to see like the leader that Eddie could have been if he had been born in Gilead.
Yeah.
Maybe Cuthbert's his twinner and everything like that.
Yeah.
I get such vibes of Cuthbert hitting Roland and putting him down in the dirt.
Yeah.
Eddie doing it to Tower.
Yeah.
That's that.
Here's what I just thought of that would be a very big contender, I think, for both of us.
Okay.
Is the dancing to Kamala.
Oh, hell yeah.
From Roland. And
that whole introduction.
That whole introduction scene too, because of course Oi trying to do the bow and stuff as well. I mean, there's a lot that's that whole scene there. But I guess it's kind of a little bit of a bigger scene, because you're really establishing our quartet to who's essentially going to be the main characters of this whole story of that book. So that is kind of a big scene, but if you want to call that a minor scene, that's up there.
Yeah.
That's a big one, I think, for both of us. It'd probably be on our top 5.
Oh, absolutely.
If we ever did like top 5 minor scenes. So
it'd be hard to, what's a minor scene?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the first thing that came to my mind when you said this is a minor scene.
Yeah.
I'm like, is it?
It's a little bit tougher to define what that means. But I think like this Aunt Talitha scene is certainly a minor scene. Certainly Moses Carver's a tiny scene. Like those are, they don't have a lot of bearing on the overall plot, but they're just beautiful little nuggets of
Yeah.
of story, and I just appreciate them a lot. So for me, I'm the opposite. It was one of my first thoughts when we saw the tower. Like
That's so fascinating. That's why I love the book clubs, because we get these insights or the in-depth stuff that we would never get to in a roundtable broad discussion.
Yeah, exactly. So next, Oi in the Dream, my next note. Oi in the Dream is the first real sight that we have of just how brave and courageous he will be. I know it's a dream, but we're getting him in all position and ready to fight something that he has no hopes of beating. Feels like a very familiar picture after I've read the whole story. Like, as I come to it now, prepping it, that just feels like a very familiar thing, is like Oi,
so,
like all down, cackled up, like facing off
Ready to
something.
fight.
Whether it's a taxi, it's like there's just different things he does where it's like, dude, you have no chance. Like, you're a tiny little thing, but it like
The bugs from the vampires and the Dixie Pig.
there's
Defending, ready to help.
and later in this book in
Yeah.
Lud, I mean, there's just different times where it's just like Oi is a brave little bastard.
He is.
And this is our first indication of that, and we don't at this point know, if we're not talking spoilers, we don't know, but like reading it on rereads, you look at this section right here, and it's like, this is very, very familiar. We're going to see Oi in this position a few times, and it really shows his. And I know it's Jake. It's just in Jake's dream, so it's not even real. But like, maybe that is one of those things that's telling about the dream, is it's kind of showing us kind of what we have in this character, or this. What
draws Jake to Oi?
Yeah,
You know, is that he wants to keep him and everything like that.
Yeah.
I could say this is one of the most disappointing parts for me, that I get sad every time we leave River Crossing, because I always wanted to know what happened. It's one of those ones that, if I could get a short story from King, where it's King sitting down in front of a, what does he write his stories on? Not a typewriter, but
word
Word
processor.
processor.
Yeah.
But he sits down in front of a word processor and he goes, and the people of River Crossing, dude, I would be so hyped to see that. Like Stephen King telling the story of how he writes about the people of River Crossing.
I know what your number one would be.
Huh.
Rhea's fate.
No.
Because we know that Roland says he runs into her again, but we don't actually know what that is.
I
guarantee that's number one. No, I mean, she's our most hated character. That was crowned in 2019 with our March Madness. But yeah, I guarantee you that there's very few people that would disagree with me there and say that seeing that payoff of probably seeing Rhea be destroyed by Roland would not be the number one thing that we'd want to see. But yes, seeing more from River Crossing. But it's kind of like Lord of the Rings, though. It's kind of one of those things, you move beyond these certain little elements of the story, and you don't come back to them. In Lord of the Rings case, though, Tolkien did have some of the appendices that give you a little bit more, but unfortunately, King didn't give us any of that, so we don't really have that.
It just kind of bothers me that we never find out, are they ever able to come out of their hiding state?
I would think no.
Do they all die when Lud gets gassed? Are they far enough away and everything? You know?
That gets wondered. Someone mentions that after the gassing, where it's like, I wonder if the people of River Crossing are far enough away. I feel like that gets asked in the story, but yes, that's
Robert says in the chat, one of the best minor scenes would be Susanna learning how to shoot.
Yes, we covered that one earlier.
Kill them hunky muffas.
Yeah. And I love it because I love her chastising Roland too.
Using that against her.
Yeah. Like, I love that stuff. That's some good stuff. My next note: the sonic boom, and just so much about the horror in the distance that Blaine seems to that he is in this section just always gives me chills on rereads. Mm-hmm. Like, every time you like these characters talk about this sonic boom or just anything about it just gives me chills. Like, my blood runs cold. Because on rereads, we understand who Blaine is. We know how dangerous he is. We know how terrifyingly fast he can go. We've been in that carriage with the Cottat. So it's just like we've
floated next to them.
All of this lead up stuff is just way more terrifying on reread because we understand what the payoff is going to be. So,
and that's why it's so. My next note, that's why it's so frustrating dealing with Eddie in this part, is because he is so hopeful. And after his experiencing Lud so many times on all of our different reads, it's so horrible. And this is one of those very few times where I'm with you. I just want to grab him and shake him in his back. Motherfuckers, pay attention to the goddamn signs.
It's like, Eddie, dude, there's a lot of fucking clues, man. Just open your eyes and you're going to see it.
Come on. Like, I'm sorry, but point to me a time in history.
Mercy can see the signs.
Yeah, she can. Point to me a time in history where God drums is ever a good thing. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
I know.
I instantly think of like
Well,
if
and
you're
that-
sludging through the jungle and all of a sudden you hear drums, you're like, well, you're about to get fucked up by some locals.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, I'm
Exactly.
sorry, but what?
The only thing that'd be worse is
and he was raised on those kinds of movies.
The only thing that'd be
too.
worse is a banjo.
Dun-dun-dun-dun-dun-dun-dun.
Yeah, that's it's definitely frustrating, but I get it. I mean, Eddie, he's kind of in a pretty hopeless world, and he is more of an optimist, so I
Yeah.
think he's going to try to cling to any hope that he can find. But yeah, it is frustrating because it's like, even on
Dude.
reread, we know, but even on the first time going through, it's like, dude. These like I'm with Eddie at the beginning. I'm hopeful. It's a cool big city. Like I wonder, we haven't seen this before in Roland's World. I wonder what this is going to be like.
Right.
And I even have maybe some of the same thoughts as Eddie,
Is it
where it's
just-
like, are we going to find a better, maybe more high tech wheelchair for Susanna? Are we going to find
Yeah, is
maybe
it-
more guns so they have enough guns for the team? Is there going to be maybe some transportation? Like there's
Right.
a lot of this shit that Eddie's hoping. I remember thinking the same thing the very first time we saw the city.
Also,
but
especially
then,
with covering Susanna, that was one of the things that you were so frustrated with early on is, dude, you got to do something to get her legs.
yeah.
And like, you got to do something to fix this. Like,
Yeah.
you can't have this through the whole story.
Yeah, it's
I
like,
remember you telling
Yeah,
us
is there
that.
prosthetics that we can
Yeah.
find? Yeah, there's all kinds of different things. But then as this progressed on, it's just like I give up hope because of all these signs, even the first time reading. So yeah, it's definitely frustrating with Eddie because you just want to shake him
Yeah.
until his teeth rattle.
Shaking Eddie syndrome.
Yes. And the next up, my last note here is I find it interesting just how unique River Crossing and the folks of River Crossing are, and not just in this story, but in any story. How often do you see a band of extremely old folks? Some of them are blind. Like they're not necessarily easy to move and stuff. That's not super common in
No.
storytelling. Like, when
If they're old, they're able to be old and not feel old.
Yeah, just like, especially in this setting of kind of like a post-apocalyptic, kill or be killed type world, like this is very unique. Like I said, like you could talk about Lord of the Rings where the elves are technically thousands of years old, but like that doesn't count.
But again, it's exactly what I'm saying is they don't look old. They don't
look old.
Feel
they,
old.
They don't have like the disabilities of age. They're not blind. They're not hardly able to move anymore.
Yeah,
Like, they're-
Elrond is still able to fight.
Yeah,
Like,
he
you
looks.
know, like,
he looks the same as he did.
Mr. Anderson.
Yeah, exactly. So I think this just feels very fresh to me, like in terms of from a storytelling perspective, because it is just very rare to have just this kind of world. Like this isn't just this happy unicorns and butterflies, easy life world. This is
Yeah.
a really hard and brutal world. So just to find any survivors, you feel like you're going to find very rough around the edges people. So to find a bunch of people that are like, probably everyone's probably 70 or so or older and some of them up over 100, like that's just a strange thing. And I just got to give King props from the writing's perspective, because that's just unique. I haven't seen
Yeah.
that in a lot of other places. So I
You don't
got
hardly
to
ever
give
see
him
it.
credit for it. And the rest of the story too, the rest of the Dark Tower, we're not going to see anything like this again. Yes, in the Kala we're going to see a few
people.
old people, but it's just as part of the larger community. It's not
It's the normal way of seeing old people. It's just part of a community. Grandpa Jaffords lives with his family, and
Yeah.
he's a bit of a burden and kind
Yeah.
of an asshole. And,
I think
that kind of thing.
I think that maybe the closest you may argue is the Manny, or most of them are old, but I feel like that's different because that's like the religious folk. Like that's a different spin to
Religious
it.
old,
It's-
but you only see the leaders. You don't ever actually see like the Manny folk.
Yeah.
Because who is it? Eisenhower or one of the ranchers married his daughter.
Yeah.
His wife is a Manny.
yeah,
She's
yeah.
the son of one of the leaders of the Manny.
Yeah.
I think the actual leader of the Manny.
Oh, so Mike said I would love to see a montage of Eddie running back and forth on the beach with Odetta, the empty chair, and the fevered Roland. And then you asked what song Velcro flies, and now the Benny Hill theme. That's brilliant. I
I
love
would
it.
love to see it.
And you got to speed it up too. You got to speed up his
Yeah.
running, so he's like flying back and forth. Yeah. Yes, it needs to happen. But yeah, so I just wanted, that's my last
yeah.
note, spoiler wise, is like it's unique to not only storytelling in general, but also even the Dark Tower series. We're going to find a lot of different types of people throughout
Yeah.
the rest of this story. But I think River Crossing, the folks of River Crossing are super unique. And I don't think that there's anyone that even comes close to being like these people are. So,
Yeah, exactly.
just got to give props to King there.
I have one final note, and it's actually a question for you. And I'll also throw this out to the chat. We got Mike, we got Robert, a couple other people. Zach was here. I want to see your opinion. Which part of the world building was your favorite here? The City of Blood, river crossing, or the talk about the war, like the Civil War and stuff like that?
For me, it's, probably the war stuff, like just how that whole thing unfolded. And like, I guess that's kind of a cheat because it's both the war and the city. Because like the war then defines what happens with the city and like how the people of the city act and how they're like after the war and like they're constantly in a defensive posture. Then they're going to let certain people in and not other people.
I guess those
like,
two kind of do go hand in hand together.
Like all of that is really cool. I remember there's on Dan Carlin did the World War I podcast, and there was the one time where they talked about the German army marching through a town, and it literally was like multiple days for the entire column
through Belgium,
to march through, and that kind of reminded me of this reminded me of that a little bit, where it's like the march of David Quick's people. It started around sunrise and went till almost sunset, so it's like you're talking an entire day. In this kind of post-apocalyptic world, that's a pretty insane column to have.
Yeah.
So like all of that's super intriguing to me, and just the way that like because it feels like maybe a bigger picture of maybe what happened with Gilead. Was Gilead a holdout like this? We know that we're gonna.
It literally says that Lud is the last bastion of hope.
Yeah, so it's like, but was Gilead also kind of this fort that was like basically besieged by the revolutionaries and stuff? Was it the final stand of that region where it's like people fell into Gilead and like they were like it's just intriguing to me because I feel like it's really enriching the story in a way because we know Jericho Hill's a thing and that's kind of like where the war is lost essentially. But beyond that, there's more that happens when wars are over. Like there's still potentially towns that need to be sieged because there's holdouts and stuff. So it just makes me think like that's why I find it so interesting with the war in the city is because I feel like it's a very interesting site as to what maybe Gilead looked like. And another Roland would have been there because after Jericho Hill, he fucking hightails it, which is right. And he needs to get on his path for his journey. And he's not going to do any good in Gilead.
Do you think that Jericho Hill happens after Gilead falls? Or do you think that's you? So you think it's?
I think Jericho Hill's like the point where if they could have won that battle, there's maybe a chance of defeating it all and keeping things.
I took it the other
like that's
way.
kind of the precipice moment, like there's whatever. But I think I think that's the thing though, because the battle went the way that it went. Like it's all over at that point. Now it's just the dominoes need to fall.
I take it the other way when he describes Jericho Hill that it's already over. This is their Alamo. We're fucked. So what? Let's go out fighting.
Yeah, it could be.
I always took it that way. When we get to that point, we need to pay attention to that because that's an interesting perspective I've never heard you say before. That it's, well, this is the final nail in the coffin of Gilead, but maybe it could have been saved if they had survived, if they had won this battle. I took it as we're fucked. Let's make our stand.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
And because I always pictured Jericho Hill being like the gunslingers and stuff. And I just feel like
it is.
And I feel like, so the gunslingers aren't necessarily like that's not everyone, right? Gilead's got a lot of other people and a lot of other people that might still be able to arm themselves and fight. They're not gunslingers, but they're going to do what they need to do, right? And so I just feel like whether it's before or after Jericho Hill, there is another story to be told there of like what happens to the rest of the court of Gilead, the people that aren't gunslingers, the people that arm themselves with whatever they can and try to hold off the horde as long as they can, when the barbarians are at the gate type stuff. So for me, that stuff's the most fascinating because of what echoes it might show. And it is just fucking badass world building. It's really fun.
Mike says in the chat, Lud, it implies so much and he capitalizes so much that was lost, like the fall of the Western Roman Empire. It's absolutely true. Yeah.
Yeah.
And for me, it's interesting. I like the river crossing stuff more because it's interesting to see the small side versus the big picture.
Yeah, that's true, yeah. And a lot of people love that with history, right? It's like cool. It's cool to learn about Churchill and FDR, but it's a whole different thing to learn about this family that lived in this part of London that was being bombed constantly during the Battle of London. It's a different type of history.
The thing that I've been reading about a lot with World War II recently over the last little bit is these fucking amazing people who rescued 100 Jewish children, or this fisherman who got the men out from Dunkirk, stuff.
Yeah.
These little heroes that are almost unsung.
Yeah.
But then you can find out about them because it has been recorded. It has been written down.
Yeah.
What they did. I mean, there was a priest in Czechoslovakia, I think it was, that saved like 10,000 Jewish children by getting them out of the country, faking their passports as a religious thing.
Yeah.
And then he ended up getting caught and executed for it.
Yeah.
It's just like people like that, those kinds of things. So seeing the river crossing is kind of like that. That's small.
Yeah.
But it's more focused. Like we get more
Yeah.
details than we do the broad strokes. Of,
It's kind of the C-3PO
right.
and R2-D2 thing where it's
Exactly.
like you see the whole unfolding of that first movie is all kind of from their perspective. So you're seeing this like larger civil war coming to a certain head, but it's all seen through the eyes of these two lowly characters, right?
There's it's the Patriot that I'm thinking of, where there's a battle that happens just outside their house and they care for the wounded men, and then the British roll up and kill them. They're traitors, and they massacre all the wounded men and everything like that right
Yeah.
there in the house. And it's just like, hey, I'm just here. Like
Yeah.
I'm not
Yeah.
But to see to see that little story, I like those little stories. Those little ones are the ones that got me.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's it for this book club. So that leaves us at the just like a little over, like, I guess we're drawing closer to 60% now. I think we have one more episode that'll be for this chapter, then we'll be moving on to the next chapter. So that will be I don't remember. I don't have my calendar open. I knew I was forgetting something, and it was the calendar.
That's what it was.
Yeah, early. So we're on the 26th right now, which is 14. So book club, the next one is May 7th is when we'll be back for a book club, and that'll be when we wrap up this chapter and then jump to the next one. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that, and we have a couple roundtables between now and then. So
do we want to talk about the bracket real fast?
Oh yeah. I guess we talked about it on the YouTube side, but for the podcast folks, if you've listened to the podcast in a timely manner before the 31st, go to the darktowerpalaver.com, go to our website there, and check out the link to go over to the poll bracket and cast your vote, because it is the finals now. We're down to 2 last characters. Have your vote heard, because on April 1st we'll have a video revealing Dark Tower Palaver's most beloved character.
Oi the Brave versus Eddie Dean of New York. Eddie made the finals, my boy.
He did. So, that will be what we got coming. And in Fortnite, we'll be back for episode 119, Roundtable.
Hey,
That's a fun little number.
119. Did we just have 119?
No, we talked about 119 in the last episode.
Oh, that's the next one. Then it was the next one. Okay.
Yeah, that's the next episode. That's what we coming up in a fortnight from now. So yeah, we will sign off as we always do by saying long days and pleasant nights.
We got to do the closing stuff first.
Oh yeah, I guess that's true. Go
You're
ahead.
a little bit off today, aren't you, sir?
Oh, I think I accidentally. There we go. Yeah, I closed my opening thing. So
Want me
I
to do mine
lost sight
first?
of it. No, I got it here.
Okay.
So, if you want to subscribe, rate, and review us on any podcasting service, stream us on Spotify or Stitcher. Find the show notes at darktowerpalaver.com, which I already just mentioned. Also for the poll, there is no show notes for this episode. We don't have show notes for the book clubs. There's really not a lot to be noted necessarily. So just find like our questions for new listeners over there. Find our bracket, all that kind of stuff. Previous episodes, and then if you want to support us, you can do that on Patreon at patreon.com/darktowerpalaver, and then Peter can tell you how to contact us.
Best way to reach us is email darktowerpalaver@gmail.com. Check us out on YouTube. It's youtube.com/darktowerpalaver. Make sure to like and subscribe. Ring the bell to get notifications, because we are posting exclusive videos now straight to YouTube, such as the bracket reaction videos are there.
Yep, and the Firestarter reaction.
And the Firestarter trailer reaction. There's going to be more content on YouTube as we go along.
Yep.
Our social medias are facebook.com/darktowerpalaver. The Twitter is @darktowerpod. That's @darktowerpod. Instagram is darktowerpalaver, all one word. And then check out our merch. It's tpublic.com/users/darktowerpalaver.
Indeed. So we will. Yeah. Now we'll sign off as we always do by saying long days and pleasant nights.
Long days and pleasant nights, folks.
All right, everyone in the chat, thank you guys for joining us. It's always good to have you guys with us, listening along as well as discussing along. I had a lot of engagement here. Sometimes book clubs are hit or miss. I tend to find sometimes you guys are like, there's a lot of people and everyone's engaged. Other times there's just a few people and they're just listening. There's not a lot of discussion. It's all good. We love you
Either
guys
way.
being involved, but it's always fun to have you guys chatting along with us and stuff. Definitely awesome to be chugging through this book. It's been a lot of fun so far. So, I'm guessing at the rate we're going, man, I think we're going to be not long into 2023 before we're moving into the 4th book.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know. Maybe I could be wrong, but I just feel like the way we're already getting close to 60% now, This episode we started around
Are we gonna
51%.
Are we going to finish it before the end of the year?
I don't know about that. That's maybe we'll see. That's what I'm saying. Easily, I think we could say by 2023 will be probably an early in 2023.
In
be my guess.
2023, we will finish this book for sure, if not sooner.
If not sooner. And I think even if we do, I think 2023, or like right around now-ish, springtime 2023, I bet you. Just gut check, guessing. No idea if it's true, but guessing that's when we'll actually be wrapping up and maybe moving over to book 4, which is going to be a lot of fun. Char, U Tree, and all. So
yeah.
All right. See you guys next time.
Bye, everyone.